Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining your 73rd National Virtual Convention. And we are here today we'd like to present to you the affiliates. We're here in our third day of the convention. And throughout the convention, you're going to hear a lot about history, a lot of history on NAREB and its affiliates. Today, we're here to represent to you um, the, uh, the presidents of such affiliates. So NAREB, you'll hear that you may have heard already, if you haven't, that NAREB was established in 1947 after coming off the heels of the war, World War II, in a time when it wasn't comfortable for people of color to join in the real estate industry. We weren't welcome. So at that point, we did what it was 11 good men and one great woman. They convened in Tampa, Florida, and came together to do what any upright standing individuals would do, is to start their own. And you're here 73 years later looking at what that is. So we're currently here today to present to you the affiliates that stem from that body or that entity, in which is what NAREB is. So I like to liken the affiliates to the 12 organs. In theory, there's 12 affiliates. There's 12 affiliates, 10 of which is going to be represented today, and you'll hear from. And I like to liken that to the 12 organs of the body. 12 equals rulership, right? 12 is a powerful number in biblical tense, and anytime we look at 12, it equals rulership, and then some even say that 12 equals perfect union. So that being the case, the 12 affiliates represent the vital organs of NAREB. And the vital organs of NAREB is one of the things that hold NAREB together. So together, they both work together cohesively and working together. So that being said, I like to just bring on, we're going to talk about, and I want to name the affiliates, and then we're going to introduce them one by one, and they'll represent their respective affiliate. So I'll just give you some background and information on the president of the affiliate, as just for a small snippet to qualify, and then the affiliate will represent and come and represent themselves and represent the affiliate that they are in charge of, if that is okay with you. So we have today with us, it's starting with the women affiliate, Women's Council, and that's Ms. Chandra Ware. The affiliate, the CID, and that's the commercial division. And then we have NSREA. NSREA is our appraisal division. And then we have the affiliate UDC. We also have NID, and the affiliate is the contractors division, and then YRD, and then RIMB as the affiliate. Each representative will be representing their affiliate. And we'll start with Ms. Chandra Ware. She represents the Women's Council. The Women's Council was established in 1969. Ms. Chandra Ware is a luxury home broker, not only a broker in Texas, but she's a broker also in the state of Los Angeles. Nothing more for myself. I'd like to present to you Ms. Chandra Ware to represent the Women's Council affiliate.
Thank you, Maurice. Good evening, or good afternoon to some, and good morning to others. As Maurice said, I am Chandra Ware, the Women's Council National President, actually the 25th National President of the Women's Council of NAREB. And I will get started so that my colleagues can have their turn and their time. The Women's Council of NAREB was established in 1971 in the city or the state of Atlanta, Georgia. Excuse me. Again, hello, my name is Chandra Ware, and I am the 2019-2021 President of the Women's Council of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And it is a pleasure to say that you have embarked on the greatest and most powerful affiliate of NAREB, the Women's Council. As a president, I encourage you to join such an amazing organization that not only focuses on women, building women professionally, but we are the boots on the ground in our communities, empowering families on general wealth building, such as financial literacy, home buyer education, and entrepreneurship, as well as community outreach. Next, we have our Board of Governors, and my current Board of Governors is Miss Madam Cassie Stanley, the Chair of the Board of Governors. The position of the Chair is that of the liaison between the Board of Governors and the President and her executive team. Madam Cassie is also the advisor to the President and the mentor. The Board of Governors are all past presidents of the Women's Council of NAREB and performs in the capacity of advisors of programs and initiatives. And the chair is actually appointed by the Board of Governors.
You are muted, Madam President.
Where did I stop? I'll just start at the mission. The mission of the Women's Council of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers is to elevate the standards of women in the real estate industry. And let me not forget, we do have a few good men by encouraging leadership, education, and the exchange of information through learning techniques, and to educate minority and low-income neighborhoods about home ownership and property acquisition. Classes of membership. We have broker members, sale members, independent salesperson members, affiliate member, member at large, and general member. Now, our member at large are those members who have no Women's Council chapter within a 50-mile radius. So they will become a member at large. The structure of our organization starts with our Board of Governors. Again, as I stated, they are our past presidents. Then the Board of Governors chair, the president, which is myself, my executive team, which is my first vice, my second vice, and my third vice. And then we have our officers, our treasurer, assistant treasurer, recording secretary, correspondence secretary, financial secretary, parliamentarian, and our chaplain. Now, these are just a few of the programs and initiatives that we do throughout the community. We have our gifted homes, and a lot of you know that we have our scholarship luncheon, which is our Katrina D. Henry Scholarship Luncheon. And we have our Viva Retreat, which we do pretty well. Our last one was last year in Florida. And then we have our financial literacy, wounded warriors, and firm. And that gives you an idea of what some of our initiative and activities and programs consist of. Here are a few pictures of the leading ladies and the men of Women's Council. And then this is our past presidents, which again are our Board of Governors. And you see that we started back in 1971 with Miss Laura Seal. And then I am the current president. We do have our honorary Board of Governors, which were Larry Cameron, Ms. Evelyn Reeves, and Ms. Maria Kong. And again, like I stated before, let's not forget our men. We do have our big brothers, which is Mr. Ray Carlisle, Mr. Roland Somerville, Mr. Ron Branch, and Mr. Larry Springs. And here you will see our executive officers for the 2021 year, which is my first vice president, Letitia Grant, Archie Emerson. Is my second vice president. My third vice president is Ida Campbell. My treasurer is Leila Gill. Hazana Rivers is assistant treasurer. Selena Ellison Jones, recording secretary. Cecilia Marlowe, corresponding secretary. Madge Day, financial secretary. Joan Chambers, parliamentarian. And of course, my chaplain, Madam Sean Singleton. We currently have 15 active chapters. And if there's some of you that would like to start a chapter, just reach out to us. And this is the way you join the Women's Council of NAREB. If you are a member, a person that does not have a chapter within your area, excuse me, you can join as an at-large member. You just go to the Women's Council website and join there. However, if there is a chapter in your area, then you reach out to that local board president. Now, this is my contact information should you need to get a hold of me. That's my current information. And again, we are in the community in all states doing financial literacy, home buyer education, just a plethora of activities that reach out, that allows us to reach out to our community and give back and educate as well as elevate. And that is the Women's Council. And that sums it up for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you, Ms. Chandra Ware. Thank you for that. We do see that the president has joined us. Would you like to divert back to that point, Mr. President? Would you like to do your introduction at this point?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
So, and thank you so much, President Muhammad. We want to, first of all, thank everyone for being on the webinar, and definitely want to introduce our 31st president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, President Donnell Williams. Let's give him a virtual clap. President Williams.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you so very much. I am in a meeting right now, and I appreciate all of you being on this call and learning about our affiliates. We have to get the foundation right, folks. So let's learn and absorb this information so that we can be better tomorrow. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that, President Williams. So next, we're moving on to our next affiliate, which we have. It is the CID, the commercial affiliate, hailing from California, Los Angeles, California. We have Ms. Shaniqua Badger, and she's going to be representing the commercial investment division of NAREB. And Ms. Badger, she teaches others how to create their own economy. And she's an instructor on the Opportunity Zone. So I'm sure we all can use some information on the Opportunity Zone, as the Opportunity Zones happen to be most in the areas where we do business. So Ms. Shaniqua Taylor is here with us, and I am going to, would you unmute your mic and let us know what you provide for us, some information on CID. Pardon me.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good morning over here out in the San Francisco Bay Area. I appreciate being out in Los Angeles virtually. I am. But for the sake of this conversation, I'm out in the San Francisco Bay Area. Again, good morning. My name is Shaniqua Badger. I am the president for what we all know as CID, with the Commercial Industrial Division of NAREB. Give me a quick thumbs up, everyone. Can you see my screen? I want to make sure that you can all see the information I want to give to you today.
Yes.
So I'm really excited to be here this morning. I hope you are all excited. Some of you are in your afternoon. And I want to make this very short and sweet if I can, and give you the information you need to make an educated decision about participating with the Commercial Industrial Division of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. Again, that's me, Shaniqua Badger. I am the team lead of the Badger Real Estate Group. We are a full service real estate team out in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are our top 10% real estate team out in the San Francisco Bay Area. We work with buyers, sellers, and investors. I am a national trainer and educator, and I sit on the boards for the California Association of Real Estate Brokers. I sit on the board of the Associated Real Property Brokers out in the other city by the bay of Oakland. And I am the president of the Commercial Industrial Division as well. So let's get this conversation started.
You muted yourself.
I caught it. I want to give you all a quick tour of what it looks like from the eyes of the commercial space in Oakland. Really quickly give you an introduction of the Commercial Industrial Division. It was founded in 1987. Really its focus is to build a bigger space for real estate practitioners, and real estate professionals in the space of commercial. Through education and training, which is my sweet spot, we can help expose and members and help not only build your businesses, but also help you build wealth consecutively. How do you get involved? Really easy. First and foremost, we want to build out a really thorough and robust monthly education series. And I think that that's very important. What most people do not know is that REO is starting to affect the commercial space now. What we haven't seen with the homeownership side of our industry for REO, we're seeing in the commercial space. Why? Because we don't see the same protections for people who are renting, leasing, and working in the landlord space for commercial. So we're starting to see a lot of defaults on that side. So we really got to get prepared for what's to come because it's coming, it's here. And also I want to give people the opportunity to join our board and join a committee. I mean, and I think that that's a common theme that you're going to hear with most of the affiliates is how is getting involved is to get really engaged in what we do. And then also I want to build out a monthly mastermind. Now this mastermind is going to be a little bit unique because it's not going to be necessarily driven by NAREB. It is going to be a member-driven mastermind where you can come together, you can help get through things that may be affecting your businesses. You can help other people grow. When somebody may be doing in LA, somebody else may not be doing in Tennessee. We want to make sure that we start building a bridge and connecting to one another and having really thorough masterminds. And I think the important thing about this is we can help connect the dots, get people sometimes out of the weeds of their business and really get them really impactful in the areas of building their businesses from a strategic standpoint. Because I think more than not, we all could lean on one another to help grow one another. And that is not only just grow one another from a business standpoint, but for me, getting involved with these affiliates are really the cream. They always say the cream rises to the top. This is where it's at, because if you want to see upward mobility in the organization, really getting involved on a committee or a board is really going to help you build yourself and grow in the organization. And really quickly, before I move from the screen, this photo right here, I'm sure LJ, who is on the line, is very familiar with this building, but this building has some very strong significance in the city of Oakland. Why? Because between the years of 1973 and 1984, it was owned by a group called the Education Opportunity Corporation, which was the legal name of the Black Panther Party school. So we want to get people back into the space of owning the buildings in which they're doing business, because guess what? Most of us who are small business owners don't realize that we are the consciousness of our community. So we need to get it back in the place of making sure that, oh, and this is in the heart of the opportunity zones, which Oakland, California has 30 census tracts, which is one of the largest footprints of census tracts in the United States. So we have to get back into the areas of buying the buildings in which we are doing business in. So with that being said, again, I told you I wanted to make this short and sweet. Here is my contact information. I encourage all of you to join us over here at the Commercial and Industrial Division. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on all social media. You can DM me, PM me, whatever the method of choice is, I answer to it all. So here's my information, and thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you, Shanique, for that. Thank you so much. Man, well, that is information. So just as a short recap, REOs, she mentioned that the space of REOs, that we are in it and that it's not to come, we are already in it. So REOs, just already to tie it together, as REOs come, there's going to be a need for management and there's going to be need for appraisals with REOs. So just to get a kind of idea where you can begin to see where and how the affiliates kind of overlap and work with one another. So just wanted to add that piece. So next up, we have from the National Society of Real Estate Appraisers, NSREA for short, and NSREA, and correct me on these dates if I'm wrong, NSREA was established in 1956. Now, a lot of these affiliates may have been born a couple years, they may have been established, and then a couple years they may have been incorporated. I know that was the case for RMB, however. So I have 1956 for the established date for NSREA, National Society of Real Estate Appraisers. We have Mr. Robbie Wilson. You just have too many, the whole alphabet. I'm just going to give him the alphabet. And he threw a virtual egg at me for bringing up his credentials, because he wants his spirit of services is one that just want to represent and serve. So he didn't want to talk too much about himself. I'm just going to just mention a couple of pieces of what Mr. Robbie he was a guest on my podcast, and I learned that he was a forensic appraiser. He owns he's a broker, and he holds an MBA, and he's an appraiser instructor, national instructor. And he's walking in the spirit of service. With nothing more for myself, I wanted to share that about Mr. Robbie Wilson, and I open the floor for you, sir. Unmute your mic and represent your affiliate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President Mohammed. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can see the slide, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks for being on the call. NSREA, National Society of Real Estate Appraiser, is, as you can see at the background, is the first affiliate of National Association of Real Estate Brokers. I want to emphasize this point, nothing against other affiliate. NSREA is number one. We're the number one affiliate, not number two, not number three, number one.
But I don't feel like it's not against any other affiliate. Don't feel that way. Just saying.
All right, these are factual information. Let's see if I can get this going. It's not going. What do I do now? I thought I got this. Okay, here we go. All right, NSREA is the nation's largest, oldest professional trade association of Black real estate appraisers, organized in the state of California in 1956 to meet the needs of appraisers who had appraisal shops, businesses, and lived in predominantly urban areas. Today, we're incorporated in the state of Michigan. Our members are licensed and certified appraisers and recognized expert in urban valuation services. Our members are called upon to provide expertise in the development of economic activities in urban areas. NSREA, as a trade association, has been and continue to educate the next generation of Black appraisers. The majority of our members are African Americans. Membership is open to all interested individuals. As you can see on the slide, the bottom is our website. We encourage everyone to go to our website and become a member. When you get to that website, this is what you see. I want to quickly just summarize that. We have different categories of membership. We have designated members, candidate, mentor members, affiliate, allied members. NSREA is very big on designated members. As you can see on the left side of the slide, you cannot, unless you're a past designated member. If you come in if you're joining us for the first time, you join as a candidate, and candidate is appraisers who are licensed or certified appraisers, and then you can work to earn our designation. Almost all appraisers today have a degree, at a minimum, a bachelor's degree, and some hold advanced degrees. For example, if you're a certified general appraiser, you want to become a certified general appraiser today, you have to have a degree. Some of these things, we are short on time, and I want to apologize for that, but maybe we can address some of these in detail during the question and answer phase. One of the benefits of becoming a NSREA member is holding one or more of our designations. And these are symbols to our designations. We have the RA designation, especially for those with expertise in residential. And you have the commercial designation. You have the the master member designation. These are the three designations that NSREA offers to its members that meet the criteria and meet the qualification and meet the standard to earn these designations. Now, let me switch a little bit. We're talking about appraisers. Appraisers are engaged in appraisal practice. So let's talk a little bit about appraisal practice. As defined here, appraisal practice is performed by an individual acting as an appraiser. I'll explain that a little bit more. Now, acting as an appraiser means what you do as an appraiser. Appraisers do appraisal in lending. Most of you are familiar with that. We do appraisals in litigation support. We do appraisals in insurance, tax appeal, bankruptcy, utilities, dispute resolution, impact studies, feasibility studies, eminent domain, consulting, and zoning. I want to emphasize this point because appraisal is not only appraising just mortgage loan. Appraisals do more than mortgage loan. Also, I want to switch a little bit to something else. The appraisal foundation. Why do I want to talk about the appraisal foundation? Because it's the elephant in the room. You know, they set the rules, they set the qualification, they set the standard for appraisers, for real property appraisers in the industry. And they're recognized, let me back up there, they're recognized by Congress as the source of appraisal standard and qualification. So it's a big deal. NSREA is one of the founding members of the Appraisal Foundation. That's also a big deal. NSREA members we have members who have served and currently serve on the Board of Trustees of the Appraisal Foundation. And again, keep in mind, the Appraisal Foundation is the one that sets the standards and the qualifications. And NSREA have members that serve on the Board of Trustees. And then these are, just to give you a name, Otis Tarp, the last name, and he's one of our past president, and as a founding member, he served in the initial board of the AQB, Appraisal Qualification Board. He served for 2 years in '89 and '90. And also Hamilton, which is one of our founding leaders, usually mentioned in this community, he also served in the Board of Trustees. Moving on. NSREA's vision of appraisal practice. That's why I talked about appraisal practice a few minutes ago. Appraisal practice is very broad. For right now, NSREA only deals with real property appraisal, but the vision is to expand to personal property and business valuation, because valuation or appraisal is not only limited to real property, there are also other aspects of valuation that deals with personal property and business. We can talk more about this. To summarize, NSREA's mission is educating, training, and mentoring. You know, again, we're short on time. Just to give you quick ideas of some of the things we're working on. To make a case, you know, obviously there's a decline in the number of appraisers in the country. Appraisers, whether it's black, white, green, purple, whatever, there's a decline in the industry. Aging of existing appraisers, especially in the Black communities. And one of the things I would like to talk about, maybe in the question phase, is there's a big change coming up January 1 of 2021 about the how to become an appraiser. Obviously, there are three criteria. One of the criteria of being experienced, you know, has been revised to make room for those who want to come into the industry where they don't have to gain the experience through what they call the supervisory model. They can gain the experience just by working on case studies, you know, and then being mentored. NSREA also, one of the things we're working on is to be a conduit between the Appraisal Foundation and HBCUs. By working with HBCUs to adopt AQB cost content, and which in turn expedite the approval of these HBCUs entities, you know, to get their program approved. The benefit of that is if you graduate from that program, you don't have to repeat the course or the classes. And also, this is one of the things that NSREA is also working on. NSREA can kickstart, work with some of the HBCUs universities to help them start from the bottom if they want to do valuation programs in their universities, we can help them do that. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, you'd like me to expand on some of these highlights that I've provided, feel free to contact me. You can also reach us through our website. Now, real quickly, most of you have been hearing in the newspaper about issues with Black ownership facing discrimination in appraisal. If you look at the information at the bottom, this is Mr. Stevens Richmond. He owns a home in Connecticut. Now, I hate that he has to do this, where he has to have his neighbor, a Caucasian, sitting for him to have his value of a property go up. Bottom line here, since we're pressed for time, let me go to the next slide and I'll sum it up. This issue is not new. You can see these are composition of other newspaper headline. What does discrimination have to do with real estate appraisal, Black home? This issue has been going on for a long time. Here's the bottom line. Whatever the bias is, whether it's bias in valuation, implicit bias, whatever you want to call it, the bottom line is if you feel that there's a bias, if you're a homeowner and you're doing an appraisal and you feel there's a bias from the appraiser, you should file a complaint with your state board, period. Because by training, appraisers cannot be biased in any form, period. Okay? So that's why I put on the bottom, NAREB is working on these issues and advocating for enforcement of the law, regulation, and ethics rules that appraisers are required to abide by. Thanks from NSREA to you, appreciate you. And then we're giving a little bit of my time. So at the appropriate time, we'll address your questions. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for that. I told you that he was a wealth of information and he had a lot of information to offer. So there's two points that I definitely wanted to bring back up at question and answer. One being the fact that he mentioned about finding out that you didn't have to, how you can bypass the experience process of becoming appraisers, and who would you file the complaint with? And I'm not sure if that's something that the members may want to know. But I just want to share that we're seeing that, one of the common themes is that education is the common thread between each of the presenters that so far has been presented. So we see that education and the value of education, not only education, but also education with certificates and becoming certified. And that's big and that's valuable. And it really sets us apart and sets NAREB apart from our peers and other educators, because the education that, in my experience, that we get through NAREB is hands down, is practical, and you can use it Monday morning after you leave the class. And that's been my experience. I just have to share that, So LJ had a power outage. If he's not back with us, he was next to go up. He said his power went down, and then he's not. So I'll take this opportunity to just present just what we have brief for what we want to present for REMBI, and then we'll go on to Mr. Matthew Harrell. So I put in the chat for you that for those who, there's a link that if you like further information that will go to all of the affiliates. If you type in and fill the information out, and I'll put it in after each of the affiliate president speaks, and you can put in your information, and that information will go to that affiliate, and they'll be able to get back in contact with you. It's just your email and your name, and you'll be able to fill that in, and then we'll make sure that they get that. Every affiliate here will get that information, and you'll be able to reach out to them and ask any questions and what questions you have and present that to the affiliate. So with that being said, what I did was ask each presenter and each president to just give 2 to 3 things about themselves that they're most proud of, and that we will bring that to the body and present that for our members, so that you know who you have in front of you, and that you know that you're in good hands. And so far from what I'm hearing is, it makes me proud to pay my dues next when the dues time comes to pay dues, because we're in good hands with getting educated, and I can enhance my business with this great leadership that's in front of us with these presidents. So REMBI, the president of REMBI, and the most, which is myself, Maurice Muhammad, and the most proudest moment for myself is being that I published my first book. I was able to publish my first book during COVID, and that was the proud moment that I've had. And becoming a broker in the state of Michigan is where it all began for NAREB. That's sentimental to me is because I'm a Muslim, if nobody noticed it, but maybe not for some reason if you didn't, I'm Muslim. And we were established in Michigan. You know, our establishment in the Nation of Islam started in Michigan. So that's near and dear to me. So those are two things that I wanted to point out. My two things that I brought that are my proud moments. So what we're doing in short, and I'm going to be short as far as RIMBY is concerned, is we are rolling out monthly classes for its members. And we'll have one class a month starting in January. And we're rolling out monthly classes for its members. And we're pivoting in how to deal with real estate and COVID, pivoting in how we're managing and doing property management in this COVID and in this COVID environment, in this COVID climate. We welcome you to join our podcast. There's a few of the presidents here that have been on our podcast to talk and share information information because we're in the spirit of service. What we do is serve, and we serve our community. And we implore you to get on the podcast and share information that you may have that you may would seem valuable to the community. So we have a podcast that usually are on Thursdays at 3 p.m. We have guests. I'm going to leave in the chat. I'll put in the chat a way for you to give us your information. If you have an interest in becoming a presenter and you'd like to present on the podcast and share, people need what you have. People need that information. Don't hold back. Don't hold back, and you can possibly help someone. So that is what I have for RIMBY. If you have any further information and you would like to know more about what we do as property management, there's a question and answer. I'm going to make mine brief and not too long for the sake of time. So the 3 points we wanted to bring out to you is the podcast, become a member. Thursday, you can find it on our RIMBY Facebook page. And look out for our monthly RIMBY class that will be provided for its members. So enough for myself. The next presenter hails from Louisville. He is the president of UDC. UDC was established, United Developers Corporation. UDC was established in the presidency of 1973 and the 1975 presidency. Mr. Harrell can give us a more accurate date of when it was established. He is in charge of APK development and construction. He's a wealth of knowledge in his craft, and he was a guest on our podcast. You'll see for yourself. I'm going to open the floor. Please, Mr. Harrell, if you can unmute your mic and let us know what you want us to know about the UDC. Thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome, man. And I'm unmuted. And for the record, it's United Developers Council, not corporation. Although we are hoping to create many corporations, particularly development and investment corporations, through UDC and some of the activities that we will be moving forward with coming into 2021. First and foremost, let me say hello to my NAREB family. I miss you all. By now, we would have been together at least 2 or 3 times, having a great time, but learning a lot from each other, and really just that camaraderie that comes with being with people that have the same interests and that are going after the same things. So I just want to first of all say I miss all of you. Can't wait to we get an opportunity to be together in person again. And I want to thank the president and the National Convention for the opportunity to speak about UDC. Now, the first thing I want to show you is this right here. I just got done with my lunch. As you get into this field, you'll find that eating is not necessarily on your list of priorities from day to day. from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you are pushing. So I have learned, right, to get my food on the run. So this is what I just got done eating. I want y'all to see that. That's Mike Sells, Groovy, Good and Hot. Right? If you've never had these, I would invite you to find a local store somewhere in your area that sells these chips, right? Because these chips are probably not what Bilal would say is is what I should be eating, right? But forgive me, Bilal, it's been a long day, right? And it's only what, 1:30, right? But this is a good analogy, right, for what I want to talk about, which is the development industry as a whole. Right now, it is good and hot, right? It is good and hot for a number of reasons. One, when you look at what our opportunities are. Two, when you look at what the cost of capital is. And three, when you look at the fact that there has been a highlight throughout the nation due to COVID and some other factors that we have been locked out of the financial system for a long, long time. So I think anytime we get an opportunity to get the light shined on the fact that we have been disenfranchised, it gives us an opportunity to push our agenda forward. And certainly that's what we're going to be focused on and have been focused on through UDC. And we will continue to do that and to share our information and to share our knowledge through a number of different things. So, let's jump right into it. So as I stated, UDC stands for United Developers Council. I'm going to share my screen here. I've got a presentation that I want to kind of go through. Let's see here. And one participant.
Are you able to share your screen, Mr. Harrell?
I think so.
There you go.
All right. Can you guys see my screen? Does it say United Developers Council?
You're good. You can put it in slideshow mode.
Perfect.
There you go.
All right.
From the beginning over to the far left.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. So UDC. So the first slide obviously is, a little bit about myself. I don't think that is really, what I want to spend my time talking about. Obviously, I've been in development for quite some time, having studied under past president, Mr. Clifford Turner, having traveled all over the country and having an opportunity to really be exposed to a lot of things that people that are, aspiring to be developers don't get an opportunity to. That has been invaluable to me in my career. And as I push forward, sort of like having those conversations on the bank with your dad when you're fishing, when he's talking about things that really don't make a whole lot of sense at the time, but as you move forward in life, just as I've moved forward in my career, those things are starting to make a lot of sense to me as I go from development to development. So, a little bit about myself. I've been in this industry, as I said, 6 or 7 years. We really started doing our own developments, about 3 or 4 years ago. And to date, we have done well over, this year, we're approaching almost $3 million in developments that we have done. So moving on, let's see here, NAREB, obviously, the whole focus of what we do came out of NAREB and the need to have more minority representation in development. Right now, currently, we represent less than 1% of development throughout the country, which is beyond amazing when you look at the fact that a good majority of all new development is currently happening in urban areas. So that provides a very unique opportunity for our membership. In terms of development, we are most able to speak to what is needed in the community and able to move forward with, allowing participation or getting participation for our community and for our members, but more importantly, that we are able to build wealth. And we'll talk a little bit about that here shortly. Significant contributions, of NAREB, creation of HUD in 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965. Obviously, we just had a very historic election. A lot of that pours back into some of the activities that NAREB has been associated with. And Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, which is an awesome tool once you understand how that works and what the responsibilities of the banks that operate in our community and what they are charged to do in terms of reinvestment into our community. So, that is something that if you have not had an opportunity to do any due diligence on what that act actually is, I would certainly encourage you to do that because there are funds right in your neighborhood and in your communities that you can access to do development. We put this on here just because these two affiliates are really closely related to the activities of UDC, Commercial and Industrial Division, which you've already heard from, and then NID, who you will hear from, are both closely related to activities that come with development. Not only are you identifying property, but you are redeveloping property, building property, but you have to manage it. And then oftentimes you've got to sell it if you're doing single family and in some cases, multifamily development. So these are really cross-educational opportunities within NAREB that will well round you into being able to be a successful developer. What our mission is really to provide educational resources and activities to build capacity among our membership and the communities for inclusion and entry into urban core and commercial development. As I said, one of the things that's so very important about becoming and creating more developers that look like us is that, we are slated, and I'll show you this here momentarily, but, we are losing our wealth at what I would say light speed, to use a Star Trek analogy. Some of the indications that we see on a financial outlook says that, we will have zero wealth in the next 30 to 50 years. And when you look at what's happening in our communities, and you take an example of a Nashville, Tennessee, where it used to be very urban core, now, some statistics say that you can't even live in downtown Nashville unless you are making over $100,000 a year. So, there are gentrification activities that are taking place that are displacing us at a ever increasing rate. And, it is more important than ever that we become involved in the types of developments and activities that are happening in our communities. One, to ensure that we are taking part of the wealth that's being created, but two, that we are having an opportunity to create legacies that we can pass on from generation to generation. I liken it to sharecropping, if you know your history, in terms of what used to happen back during slavery, where, right after slavery, you would find African-American families working for the acquisition of land. So basically what it did was you would work for someone else, and then your pay would be to gain acreage year after year, right? So certainly I see those same attributes when you look at what's happening in the urban core and the development that's taking place by people that often do not look like us. And the fear of that is that, we're going to become a migrant population. Migrants might be defined by foreign birth, foreign citizenship, or they're moving into a new country to stay temporarily or to settle for the long term. Basically what that means, if I break that down into layman terms, is that if you don't own it, you are relegated to living where they tell you to live, which means that you have no control. And considering that the development is happening in the urban core, that's certainly something that I feel as a NAREB member we should be very, very concerned about, and very, very involved as it relates to what's happening in our communities. Why development? Why now? Big facts. It's just not looking good. Home ownership is lower for Black college graduates than for white high school dropouts. 17% of Black and white home ownership gap can't be explained by identifiable factors. That means that there's some salt in the game somewhere as relates to equal access to home ownership and equal access to capital. In 2018, survey found that whites severely underestimate the racial wealth gap. Again, that goes back to some of the spotlight that we are seeing because of COVID. They think that Black wealth is about 80% that of whites. Data from the US Census Bureau reveals that Black wealth is actually about 7%. So that means for every dollar that a person that is not Black, that is actually white or Caucasian, for every dollar they have, we basically have 7 cents. And that is very, very concerning, not only to me, but should be to you, and why it is a sense of urgency for us to get involved in these types of activities. Median wealth of Blacks will fall to 0 by 2053. That's what some of the numbers are showing. Knowing these gaps should be a priority for anyone concerned with securing equality of opportunity and financial security for all Americans. These gaps are directly connected to Black people having less wealth, less savings and retirement funds, less access to educational opportunity, and poor health outcomes than white people. So, we've got some serious work to do. When you look at 33% of all development is happening in the urban core, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. UDC's goal and their charge, as I see it as a national president, is to expose, take advantage of those, right? So enterprise zones, newly formed CBFIs and new market tax credits. These are all things that I, as the president, have been working and studying very diligently.
Are you there?
We're losing you, Matthew.
Like we lost him.
Yeah.
Okay, we have well, until he comes back.
He's still there, but he's still talking. It's just that he's on mute.
Right.
Someone
Okay,
keeps.
he's on mute.
You're on mute, Matthew.
You're on mute, Matthew. For the sake of time, we do have a hard stop at 1:55. We just got a message. So if the next present, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, so, all right, I'm done. But, UDC is a very integral part of NAREB. We look forward to your participation. Here's my contact information. That's my direct cell. And then that's our direct email. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll certainly be pushing out information to the membership. We look forward to working and growing with you. Thank you.
Can you call out your email and number because your screen's not still sharing?
Okay. Yeah, my phone number is area code 502-714-8416.
Mm-hmm.
And then the email is udcnareb@udcnareb.org.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you
for that. Thank you. And I'll also put in the chat a link that you can drop your information, and I'll make sure that each affiliate gets that information, and it'll definitely get to them. Thank you for that. So for the next presenters, we have a few more presenters. We have a hard stop at 1:55 in the last message. So we did want to have some time for question and answers. However, I wanted to bring up NID, which is NAREB NID. Was established in 1987. In the NAREB Investment Division. So make sure I got that right. NAREB Investment Division, and Mr. Carlisle, President Carlisle's proud moments is that his 52 years of service, membership in NAREB, second generation, now third generation, and this of service nationwide with his affiliate, and being the second honorary NAREB president. So those are his two proud moments that he wanted to have sharing with the body and with the membership. So nothing further for myself. I want to bring you Mr. Ray Carlisle. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad, and thank you for a wonderful job, and thank you for this wide participation of all you NAREB members. And I see my brother Jim Haynes is looking in. Jim, he's a past president of NAREB, the founder of the Young Turks. You guys represent the next wave of the Young Turks. And so, and your president, Lydia Pope, is like a daughter to him. So a lot of great things come out of Cleveland. Jim, good to see you. Okay, with that, I won't take up much of your time because many of you know quite a bit about NID, but our history actually, the thought process actually started in 1967 when Martin Luther King Jr. made his speech at the NAREB convention at Fairmont Hotel here in San Francisco. And the things that we're talking about today, he talked about that then in 1967 to us at the convention in San Francisco. And we have pretty much been blocked in almost every way. And I'm talking about legislatively and from local to national legislation. Now, that's for a reason, because we have a great deal of potential, as Mr. Harold talked about in UDC. The investment centers of this nation are the urban centers. You are the stewards of those urban centers. Don't give it away. Don't sell it. And so, because when you sell your influence, you're selling your people. Mr. Harold also talked about slavery, and that's what I call it. You're back into that business. And so be proud of your heritage, stand up for it, and represent it as a professional. Now, NID, development projects are the seed of what we do as real estate professionals. And Mr. Holmes, the founder of several of these affiliates, he and Sam Pierce, the Republican Secretary of HUD, made a, can't say deal, when it came to an agreement, let's say, that they would allow NAREB to keep one investment product in HUD, because at that time, HUD was wiping out all investor programs because there was so much fraud in those programs. So we chose the 203K program to revitalize that and get it to, because we saw the things that we could do with it. The major thing that we focused on then, quite frankly, was mixed use development. And that is have the residents upstairs as for the commercial loan and do the shell on the lower level for commercial retail space. And so, and because, you know, a lot of us, you know, you come from families that's been in real estate, you had your apartment upstairs or your liquor store downstairs. And so we go back to that as the foundation. And so that's been approved. It has not been used as much as I would like, but it's still there and it still could be used. We also, with that program, converted 54 townhouses to single family home ownership in Baytown, Texas. And so, and we saw it and we had one approved in Camden, New Jersey, 166 units. All is going to be financed acquisition, construction, and sell to homeowners. And so you can still do that today. And I say that because Andrew Cuomo did it when he left HUD. When he went back to New York, he did 2,000 units. And so I want you to look at that and all of the things that you bring to the table, the levels of expertise, of how we use this time with a president that is devoted to the Black community economic development. And we got a vice president that understands this stuff coming out of San Francisco, and people like me help raise her. And so we know she understands it and she will listen, but be careful, she is a prosecutor. She does not she won't make any excuses for nobody. She ain't gonna let that be blamed on her. So do it right, you'll be supported. If you look sketchy, she will not touch you, and she will advise this president and every cabinet secretary not to touch you, because there's just too many traps for us. We make a mistake, it's criminalized. And so there will be mistakes, but there are ways to manage mistakes. And the first thing is to be transparent and address it and get through it, and you'll be okay. Now, with that, now I'm going back to 67, and we're going all the way up to today's time. Right now, I'm working on with another entity, because NID consults with other affordable housing developers and cities. And so I've been a contractor consultant with the city of San Francisco, Los Angeles, several cities across the country, actually 50 different cities over my career. But right now, we got an historic development called the Watts section of Los Angeles. That was the first major ride in 1964 in the country. And finally worked on this for 15 years to say that I wanted on its 50th anniversary to redevelop the Watts project. Now, we're 12 years into it. It's a $1.4 billion project, but we have broken ground, and it's going to be 1,100 units, affordable housing and market rate housing, shopping centers. The shopping centers themselves are finished. The commercial is finished. The housing takes longer, mainly because you got to get the subsidies to build it. The thing that was interesting to me is that the market, the commercial developers is saying we can make money here now. And just like working with CID, Commercial Industrial Division, which Jim Haynes was the first president of, and we've talked about this often because he was developing chicken franchises, building them up from the ground up. And so he understood if you build a business in areas that had the spending capacity, and you got to match what you're going to build there with that spending capacity, that you are going to profit. And so that's why our appraisals are so critically important to us, because now it's not just an appraisal, it's a feasibility study. That's why being a general appraiser is important, because then you graduate to being feasibility study writers. And then that gets you to the area where you qualify to recommend to a redevelopment agency of lending money to a minority developer based on the value of the property and not the money in their bank account. Because many of us ain't going to have that money in the bank account. Because that's one of the barriers, is that how much money do you have? Well, you don't have as much money as these folks, so you can't participate. That is false. You can build your equity from who you are. And we in the investment division, we know how to help you do that. Now, also, and so I'm very proud of that development, and because it's historic, because I'm a major decision maker in it. And so, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. We're doing the same thing in Potrero Hill in San Francisco, and also in my hometown of Oakland, California, where I've already done 300, we've already done 900 units in the city of Oakland of affordable housing in one section, and that's the West Oakland section where I grew up at. But now we're going to redevelop one of those into 519 units of affordable housing and for sale housing, about 174 sale housing units that I want the buyers to be historic residents. And when they purchase it and we close on the purchase, they have equity. When we close on the purchase, they have equity. That means that any profit that was to come to the organization that I'm a part of, it won't be there. And so what we did with the profits from the 297 units was we say none of us take any income from it. I want all Black staff. I got 17 Blacks, all Black management, all Black, everybody over there is Black. Never been in the property management business before, but they're there, they're running it, and they have a partial ownership. And so we're very proud of that. So, but what the power that the influences that gives you is that now you have an army to support you in your other developments. And I'll close with this, a commercial development we did, and Magic Johnson was our major tenant down in Altadena, California. That was not one dime of public money was put into that. We were able to arrange the deal with a development partner. Well, we maintained 30% ownership, them 70% ownership. and they had to leave money in the deal. It runs off about $250,000 a year that we can keep. And a lot of people say, okay, I like that, I can retire on that. Guess what? When you are an investor in something, when you're making money, you get your money. When the development struggles, like, you know, like with COVID, commercial stuff goes down, then you come to the table and you got to put in money to close the gap. And so we want to educate you on being a permanent community investor. And it takes diligence, property management skills, and also political wherewithal. Now, I'll close this out. That's the NAREB investment division. It goes back to helping leverage what we learned years ago. And in working with past President Reed, you know, NID was established before then, but then we contracted with the FDIC RTC, and Ms. Reeves managed that program. We helped write that program with our knowledge, and that is, how do you structure an affordable, the multifamily assets that the FDIC took from the banks, how do you structure them so they can be put into affordable housing service? To make a long story short, it took us 2 years. They fought us every step of the way because they did not want us to participate. Madam Reed sold more properties than anybody in the system, we call them technical assistance advisors, all over the country. We hired realtors to work with us. A couple of realtors were very successful in selling 200-300 units. And they wanted to keep their names quiet. I always wanted to advertise who they were, but they said, no, don't tell anybody. But they did great work. And that's why I know each and every one of you are qualified to do great work if you're given the opportunity and the training. And that's coming back now because the multifamily market is getting soft because of this COVID. We're looking at some challenges, some opportunities there again, and we will be advising on how that should be structured. But in the end, when they did not want us in, we didn't beg to be in, we demanded to be in, and then we sued them to get in. And once we got in, we worked 2 years for no money. That's why you got to show people you ain't going nowhere. You got to be to do that. And so we structure it, and I'm saying there's a way you can do it. People will say, well, you got money, so you can do that. Boy, I'm going to tell you, Ms. Reeves heard you say that. You don't know what kind of money nobody got and at what time in their life they have it and don't have it. Because they keep on moving because they know they're going to be successful. And so out of that, after 5 years, and she was the queen of this program, 66,000 units of affordable housing. Now, the FDIC told us, well, we don't manage this stuff all over the country. Do you think you guys want to manage it for us? We were smart. Most people say, yeah, I get my management fee. How you going to manage something in South Dakota? You know, we don't have any partners up there. And so in the South, you have to be structured to run the business. You can't be a startup with something this important. And so you make sure you develop the relationships and the right partnerships so that you, when these opportunities come forward, you can take part in them because you are a valuable participant. Then I'll close with this, the housing counseling program. A lot of people think that this housing counseling program is some kind of windfall. It's a struggle. It took us 15 years to get into the program. And when it started, we did not want it to be over in the hood because we had started the community homebuyer program with Fannie Mae, addressing CRA issues that was talked about earlier. We were highly successful in it. And we were able to push Fannie Mae to issue 97% mortgage loans. That's another whole story in history. It required counseling, but it wasn't HUD certified counseling because there was no such thing then, just HUD counseling. We took away 60% of HUD's business. Blacks started using commercial mortgages at 97% because they were cheaper than HUD. That's when Nick said this when Bill Clinton came into office. Nick was a housing commissioner, and he asked me, how did you guys structure it and how does it work? And foolishly, you know, he's a friend, I told him that, you know, sometimes we get excited when somebody praises our programs. Then he said, well, we're going to start that in HUD and say, we want you to be the first grantee. I looked at the regulations. There was no way on earth that we could do. The government said that we needed to do. There was no place. And most of the people that signed up for it, they got in trouble. And so we worked with them for 4 consecutive years. And I won't tell you how much time, how much money in legal costs to restructure it so that we as real estate professionals could participate in the program. And then we had the challenge that we were called by certain groups that we were racist because we were all Black and wouldn't let the others in. Then they demanded that we train the Hispanic people in this housing counseling stuff. And so, yeah, we took on about 23 officers, and immediately they found out that those guys were just doing everything they wanted to do. And I asked them, well, why would you do something like that? They said, I said, they're coming after you. You said, well, we can just go to Mexico. Well, we can't just go to Africa and get away. And we don't want to. And so we got them out of the program. We reported it. They thanked us for taking the chance and training them. They say, well, how do you know your people are not doing the same thing? Well, I'm not naive. They will do the same thing. So we have a stringent regulatory system to protect our image, our name, and those things that we have won. And so we tell people, if you're not ready to be a good steward of what we do, then you should not want to even think about being an NID, HUD certified counselor, because we're going to do it right, because the opportunities that all these other affiliates are talking about, this NID helps give the entryway to those opportunities. And so with that, I want to thank you, Brother Muhammad, and
thank you,
presidents, and we will be coming together to structure training programs and informational programs for you, and we'll put this stuff together. We're not crossing, all over each other, saying that we're all doing the same thing, because the job is too big and we need more people to specialize in certain areas so they can become good at it, so we can be proficient and competitive with now the people that want to come into our cities. Because when they didn't want to come, we can do that fight. We can't afford to now because, and by the preacher or the neighborhood hustler and the real estate professional ain't going to be involved. And so with that, Brother Muhammad and Brother Sharif, who's the president of the Young Realtors, want to bring in these young people. So when you get my age, I can just ramble on and y'all can go get the money. With that, thank you for the participation and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. You can't tell me that that information wasn't invaluable. We could definitely use that in every city, and that is information that could be utilized for sure. Thank you. So with that being said, we have Bilal Sharif is our next panelist, and he is the president of YRD, which was established in 1998. He retired at the age of 25 as a teacher, and by the age of 26, he was in charge of $5 million worth of real estate and assets by the age of 26. Not to mention that he graduated in magna cum laude at his college, where I had to look that word up. I didn't know what that meant. Look it up. So he graduated magna cum laude. He's the broker and owner at Advanced Realty Concepts. I don't see Mr. Holmes, so I believe Mr. Sharif is the last one. If Mr. Holmes is not in, oh no, we have Ms. Rolanda to share her words. But with nothing more for myself, Brother Bilal, you can go ahead and let us know what you want to give us the information on Young Realtors, please. Thank you.
All right, I really appreciate that, President Muhammad, President Carlisle, all the presidents that have shared. I think y'all set me up after going after President Carlisle with that very in-depth, history lesson and everything, the fantastic things that they're doing. But I will take a very brief moment to share, on the Young Realtors division. The Women's Council, you say you all are the most powerful. Well, the Young Realtors has to be one of the most relevant, because if we all know, if you're not getting young involved in your business and organization, then your organization is dying. So with that being said, I'm looking to share my screen here. Here we go. Y'all give me a thumbs up. Uh-oh, I can't even see. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Put in presentation mode.
You're up. Your screen is up.
Okay, great. As you mentioned, the Young Real Estate Division was founded in '98 and further reestablished in 2018, is now headquartered right out of Atlanta, Georgia. Our mission is to redefine the real estate culture for tomorrow's leaders. When we say redefine, just, a culture that's more collaborative and less competitive. I don't look at other agents and brokers as competition, and that's the kind of spirit that we're looking to embrace to see how we can really more so collaborate, with others. Our vision is to empower our youth and communities through financial education, wealth building, career exposure, mentorship, professional development, and leadership training. And we're looking to develop different modules, programs, and initiatives up under all of those. Mission is within our vision. They say that NAREB is a highway to success, and that all of the different affiliates are the different exits that you can get off, to achieve a certain level of success. You can get back on that highway and, exit another affiliate. Well, just consider the Young Realtors Division, your GPS or your GPS to success, as we've adopted that tagline. The Young Realtors Division is a little bit unique to most other affiliates because we aren't a specialized field. Rather, we're here to further promote. Okay, there we go. The objective of Young Realtors is to increase awareness throughout NAREB and to further promote all of the different affiliates, and also to foster leadership development, foster new leaders within the organization. We advocate for high school and college students to enter into the real estate profession, through our career exposure and mentorship programs. We're looking to form local teams of certified members of 20 members or more. And once we get 20 members, then we will present a team leader. Our core values around advocacy, community, youth, education, and technology. I would just say, when I went to my first Empire Board meeting more than 10 years ago, I first learned of the Young Realtors Division and the student chapter, and that's what really drew me to the organization. As he mentioned, I retired from teaching at 25, a self-proclaimed retirement, literally because I knew that I wanted to do real estate since I was in about 7th grade, and I was lucky to have a mentor that, mentored me into the real estate investment arena. So as he mentioned, by the time I was 25, 26, I was already, owning and controlling more than, a few millions of dollars worth of real estate, and, was able to achieve, multiple 6 figures, fresh out of college. So I felt the need to really pour that back into someone. So I started going into the schools, and as I was going into the schools, talking about financial literacy, talking about financial education, we would go over the money smart needs versus want, go down the budget with all the kids. And once they realized going over the budget that they had to go with their need of the used Camry and not that new Land Rover, going through the budget, rent, insurance, everything in the budget, that they still didn't have any money at the end of the day. They hadn't been to the movies. They hadn't did any extracurricular. They hadn't even bought any shoes. The bell would ring, no one wanted to go anywhere. I knew immediately I had to, come up with programs and really increase the more troops, because I was new within the organization. The market was just tanking, and, I love to be able to do that, but I knew I had to rally more troops because I couldn't just do this by myself. So with that being said, as, the president of Young Realtors, the team and I are looking at increasing opportunities for members, whether they're in real estate development, partnering with the other affiliates, property management, NID, everything that has been mentioned, to help everyone increase their bottom line so that we can have more of an impact and go into the schools and, build our businesses in a way that they can run themselves, and we can go into schools and have more mentorship. Now, when we say young has multiple meanings. We say young in age because we are looking to promote and develop individuals up under the age of 40, but also young within the industry, young within the organization, and as you see here, a special category that we call young at heart. So those are more so advisory capacity members that subscribe to our mission, like Ray Carlisle, like myself, like a Shaniqua Badger, that have been in more than 5 or 10 years, that may have just crossed that barely crossed that 40 threshold, but still are adamant about promoting young leaders as we look to mentor them and want them to encourage them to reach down to the next generation to mentor them as well. We even honored Mr. Roby last year at his 100th birthday party and gave him a lifetime membership to Young Realtors Division because of his contributions and continued commitment. He had been a past president of the organization. He was 74 years old, still going into brokerage offices, recruiting new members. And actually, that's where past NAREB President Jeffrey Hicks first learned about the organization. Just going to go through some very brief tools here. There's a tool that we're working on. We're in pre-launch status. And as you see over there to the left, it does say free. So everyone that go ahead and text the letters RCN right now to that number there, you can get a free subscription level membership to the Young Realtors Division by filling out just your basic information and being able to show up on our map that we're looking to embed into our website. This is the same type of website that other local boards can adopt. You know, we mentioned our core values and technology is one of them. So we're already having conversations. If you're another local board, literally where you can embed this into your sites, you can filter it out by affiliates, by boards, attorneys, salespersons, etc. Show up on the map. Once you show up on the map, now with the free membership, you're just gonna get a pin and you would just get, you know, your name and email. But if you paid a nominal $50 to YRD, which you could just text the word join to that same number and go ahead and sign up now, you get to build out a full member profile. And here's a picture of that profile here, what you would get. So you have what affiliates that you're associated with, what local board, your membership classification. You get to build out a bio, and then you're going to have hyperlinks directly to your social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. Doing a brief survey about what you join NAREB and what you're expecting to get out of NAREB. Those questions may change. As I told you, we're still in beta mode, but we just have a lot of tools and really trying to embrace technology to simplify things, just as we're telling you to text and you should automatically get that form to fill out, trying to incorporate things like this to embed into our sites and other local board sites as well. Just highlight a couple of our partnerships that we're excited about. This is one with the Seek Foundation. There's actually another colleague from Thune-Cookman that was able to leverage, quite a few dollars related to, it's a nonprofit organization. Seek stands for Seeking Education Empowers Knowledge, where she focuses and targets high schoolers and even middle schoolers and does programming around STEM-based programming. They build out, literally, they able to build robots, they build cars, they build literally housing models. So we're trying to add some of the educational and entrepreneurship components to that program. We have a partnership that we can build and bring to some of your local boards, especially if you have a building right now. We brought it to the Empire Board because the buildings are empty. She even flew out to California when we did a retreat out there back in October and took a look at a building that Consolidated had because her specialty is programming. So we're looking to bring other programming that include the youth at an early age, because these are going to be the people that help not only own the property, but help to build the property, the young architects, etc. So we're really, looking to partner with organizations similar to those. GPI is another one that we're very excited about. One of our past presidents, Stacy Mullison of the Empire Board, transitioned her real estate business to a federal contracting business and literally leveraged more than $66 million in contracts in the first 3 years. So we have some special discounted programming and cohort that we're doing with GPI that we're very excited about. And there will be some member-only discounts for that. We're looking to further bring more collaborations with all the affiliates, as already been mentioned, to increase the educational offerings. We have another partnership. Well, quite a few partnerships. I can't announce them all right here. I got to leave a little bit for some of my members to kind of let them feel like they got some exclusive announcements from us, as we will be having our member-only meeting next Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock, on the West Coast. So if you would like to subscribe to some of the other initiatives of Realtors Connect, even some of the other partnerships we have, be sure to just text GPS, and you can see some of the things we have for you all to fill out and to be a part of. One of them is expanded partnership, even that NAREB has had with ADT, to not only still give you $200 every time you place an alarm with the sale, but also to give another $100 towards your membership dues. So if you do three alarms, you've made $600, and your membership dues are in essence are free. Then we're also still earmarking $50 to the local board and money to the national organization as well. So we've been very strategic. Shout out to the whole YRD national team that may be on the call. Our first Vice President, Tamisha Wells, Anthony Cartwright, Second Vice President, Secretary Cammie Davis, Treasurer Rashida, Assistant Treasurer Rashida Jones for Treasurer, Assistant Treasurer. We have Terry Copeland. We have Parliamentarian Lachelle Stewart, Chaplain Emmerich Peace. Can't leave anyone out. But either way it goes, we still have other positions that we're looking to fill. Anyone that, go ahead and text us, we will get you in a database. I will put the, or Jill, you could put the yrdnational@gmail.com in there so that y'all can email us. And that's it on a nutshell. I will tell you a few things that we have coming soon, though. We have some enhanced leadership development training that we're going to be doing very soon. We have a Realtors Ambassador program, not like the other ambassador program that you heard. That was one that was actually borrowed. I won't say stole, but it was borrowed. But we have a Realtors Ambassador program that we're doing, and we're really to really put out there that's going to really make a big impact. We have an international investment council that we're already pulling together right now. I went to Ghana twice last year, and there are quite a few opportunities there. I was on a call with the Georgia to Guyana Transit and Business Authority that's been presided over by also Young Realtors and past President Stacey Mullison, and other opportunities that we're pulling out there. So with that being said, I know we're already over time. I wish I could share more, but we have also going into the trade schools, the HBCUs. We're going to be launching our careers in real estate. We did a successful one last year, here at the Empire Board, where we literally had speed dating with commercial real estate, where we had 6 students to be able to obtain 6-figure salaries by the end of that event. So we're trying to bring things that's going to engage our youth, engage our members, to keep them going. And for $50, I advise you to go ahead and join the movement now, as we're looking to build out more of our committees and offerings, because some of these things that we're doing in technology, the price will go up.
Yeah, thank you, Bilal. Great presentation. Great presentation.
Appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. Great presentation, a wealth of information. The link is in the chat. If you would like to get more information, you can join. You can click on the link and get more information and get directly in contact with Bilal for YRD. Last but not least, we have with us Yolanda Wilson from the Home Buyers Council affiliate. Did I get that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Maurice.
Yes, ma'am.
So I will be brief, but just want to give everyone an introduction to the NAREB Home Buying Education and Counseling Division. It was founded in 1994 in Milwaukee by Ms. Mary Bruce. But I do have the pleasure and want to thank past President James Haynes for allowing me to fill such big shoes in taking over this division. The mission of our division is to train NAREB members in less restrictive, non-HUD approved home buying education and counseling services. So we know that NAREB is available, NID is available to provide the 8-hour home buyer education certificate to our first-time home buyers to enable them to be able to use first-time home buyer programs. But if you've got clients who just need some home buyer education, someone that hold their hands through the process and give them the tools to be able to move to the next step, this is where a home buyer education and counseling division can come and step in. We've developed a model of a curriculum that was presented in 2001 to the Wisconsin Housing and Finance Agency, and it remains a foundation for their program today. And we want to make this available to our members, our Realtors members, to be able to work with their mortgage lending partners and educate their personal business clients on the home purchase and financing process. So this division is not regulated by HUD, and it does not have to adhere to those HUD guidelines, but we will be adhering to the regulations, rules, guidelines, and code of ethics of NAREB. We want to be able to work with our other NAREB affiliates. So as you can see in this program, we will work hand in hand with not only the NID division, but also with Women's Council, any of the other affiliates who has a goal and a mission and a passion to be able to help their home buying clients. So we'll hear more for us coming up in 2021, and I hope everyone is excited and will join us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for being brief, and thank you. We are over time, and I have to definitely take the brunt of the weight of that, being the moderator. I wanted to just thank you all for coming out, and just hoping that you coming out and joining your 73rd anniversary of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers annual convention, and hopefully you have some information. You have information that you can take back and see the value of the affiliates. And the purpose of this was for us to bring information so that you can see how these affiliates can make money for you in your business, and you can utilize these in your business. No more from myself. I will drop the link inside of the chat for you to drop your information. Several of the members asked for the PowerPoint slides. So I'll drop the link in the chat. If you click on the link and you provide your information, we'll make sure that you get the information that you slides and information for whatever affiliate you have an interest in. So that being said, nothing more from myself. I'm going to turn back over the meeting to the Ruby or Miss Ruby, or is it Linda?
Jill, take care.
Jill, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Mohammed. Wow. Everybody give our affiliates a virtual hand clap, please. You all did an amazing job. I learned some things that I did not know. Thank you for your wonderful presentations. We don't want to belabor the time because we have a wonderful boot camp coming up. Who can ever learn enough about credit and the FICO system? That would be nobody. But first, we want to bring up our wonderful relationship manager, who is literally on the phone day and night, Monday through Sunday, talking to our partners and making sure that we have created and crafted and maintained and retained wonderful partners. And that would be none other than Miss C. Renee Wilson.
Thank you so much, Jill. I certainly appreciate the introduction. This is our opportunity to take a pause and take a moment to do a couple of things. This is our Power Partner Pause, and we do this for a couple of reasons. First, we want to take an opportunity to let our partners know that we appreciate everything that they do to support us. Whether it's resources, information, finance, we truly appreciate everything that our partners do. We have quite a few that are supporting this convention at this time. So I would like to, the two things that we also try to do, and I lost my screen. Thank you, Jill. The two things that we try to do, one is the appreciation, and the others is we give our partners an opportunity to share information with you in order to serve your consumers, your clients, to get them into home ownership. All this is about home ownership. So first I want to introduce Scott Willis, who is U.S. Bank's National Strategic Markets and Affordable Lending Team leader. But Scott is no stranger to NAREB. He has been around us for a while. So Scott, you're like family. So I would like to turn it over to you to share some information with our Realtors family and others that are on the virtual convention. Scott?
Awesome. Yes. Renee, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome.
There you are.
Okay, great. Thank you for that very pleasant introduction. You know, it's funny, I do feel like family when I'm able to be around the affiliates and leadership of NAREB. So I appreciate you definitely saying that. So I'll be brief. I know we're running a little bit behind time, but I do have a few things I want to share. First of all, I want to wish everybody good afternoon and congratulations on the launch of your 73rd annual virtual convention. I guess annual would be the newer piece of it, but certainly virtual would be the newer piece of it. but certainly your 73rd annual convention. On behalf of our 3,100 branches and 73,000 employees, as Renee said, my name is Scott Willis, and I'm a part of our National Strategic Markets and Affordable Lending team here at US Bank, which is responsible for leading our cross-channel home loan growth strategy focused on first-time home buyers, low to moderate income consumers, and multicultural segments. I want to start by saying that 2020 will be a calendar year I will not soon forget. I'm sure soon many of you feel the same way. The COVID-19 pandemic over the last 10 months has offered a host of unforeseen challenges, as well as new opportunities for all of us, based on one, the sheer impact and toll on the human condition, be it permanent loss or enduring a long-term separations from loved ones. Personally can relate to both of those. Two, the broad adoption of a work from home and school from home policies, requiring huge personal and business pivots in the interest of sheltering in place and also safety measures. And three, a tipping point in national support for a social justice agenda, of which NAREB's work in educating, empowering, and mobilizing the industry and our communities around the African-American wealth gap will continue to be of critical importance. And funny, this was all set within a housing real estate market that was defined by a V-shaped recovery, combining low interest rates, the importance of a home now, reinforced by the pandemic condition, and the continuation of a strong pre-COVID market, leading to an increased demand for single-family real estate, whether it be for ownership or in some cases also rent. So as the world in which we live and work has already started to reimagine itself for 2021 and beyond, and we prepare for this large-scale vaccination rollout, thankfully, that will go well. Our message to NAREB is that you can continue to count on our long-term partnership with US Bank Home Mortgage, which is and will remain focused on our core mission of offering a holistic home mortgage experience via a combination of technology and personal relationships to not only promote sustainable home ownership, but also grow the business. In the area of sustainable home ownership, obviously at the beckoning of the federal government, US Bank developed and rolled out initiatives under the CARES Act, including the economic impact payment, mortgage assistance and forbearance, IRA and retirement account, SBA paycheck protection, and the Main Street commercial lending programs to all support customers financially affected by COVID-19. So if you're interested in more eligibility information about these options, or know someone that may still be in distress, I will drop our COVID-19 splash page link in the chat, and the information is there for you to review and share with other COIs or affected clients. With regard to growing the business, our second piece, in collaboration with NAREB's local boards, Women's Council and NID division affiliates, and our first mortgage, GSE, FHA, VA, USDA, and also Housing Finance Agency partners in 2020, we're pleased to report that US Bank Home Mortgage closed over $25 billion in mortgage volume just in the third quarter of 2020 alone, serving over 80,000 customers, in addition to finishing as the number one retail lender in percentage growth in both quarter over quarter and year over year volume. So know that we could not have achieved this success without our NAREB partnership, and we are grateful for your support. So if you're interested in following up with a member of our US Bank team to learn more about one, our recruiting value proposition for retail originators, sales managers, we're also hiring operations folks who you think would want to know more about the culture US Bank is growing in your local markets, and two, also learn more about our business development value proposition to local realtor, builder, and 501c3 partners. Please reach out to me via LinkedIn or my email address, which I will also drop in the chat. So on behalf of Lenny, John, Vanessa, Sodi, and myself, our entire team, I want to thank NAREB for your partnership in 2020. And we're looking forward to bigger and broader impact in the African-American community in 2021 and beyond. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you so much, Scott. We so appreciate that information. And to not prolong the day, I am going to introduce our first Vice President, Ms. Courtney Johnson Rose, who is going to be your moderator today for the boot camp session. So Ms. Rose, it's on you.
Good afternoon, realtors. I should say good morning to our friends on the West Coast and good afternoon to our friends on the East Coast. It's so exciting to have this opportunity to have our 73rd annual conference virtually, and it's been a blessing. It's been good information shared. I am honored and glad to see all of you all from across the country, and glad that we are blessed still to be a blessing. And thank you again for this opportunity to moderate. As we start our session, it's the FICO Boot Camp. We all know how important credit is to our customers. We know how important it is for us as the leaders in this industry to understand credit and to have strategies that we can utilize to help our clients achieve the dream of homeownership. So we're very fortunate to have two presenters here from FICO that will do a boot camp with us. But before we start that, I do want to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, we want you to be social. Hashtag on Facebook, Instagram, anything that you're on that you're sharing with your members and your colleagues across the country. The hashtag that we're using is hashtag NAREB73. Hashtag NAREB73. So please share it and please let folks know that you are a part of our great organization and our wonderful conference. Secondly, we will use the chat box in order to ask questions. Ms. Jill Harrison from our national office is doing a phenomenal job for us. We'll be monitoring the chat box and we'll be facilitating the question and answer at the end of these presenters' presentations. So if you have questions as they come up, go ahead and put them in the chat box. Also, usually we're in a workshop room where we have opportunities to network and talk. We can't be as social here, but if you want to give a shout out or say amen or say ouch during the presentation, feel free to put that in the chat box also too. We're utilizing that as our way to share valuable information. Before I introduce the presenters, I do just want to recognize our national president. If he is on the line, ask him to do greetings for us.
No, ma'am, he's not yet on.
Okay, well, hopefully he'll be on by the end of the call, but we do want to recognize our 31st president, Mr. Donnell Williams, in his absence and thank him for his leadership.
He just jumped on, Madam Rose. He just jumped on.
Okay, perfect. So it's my pleasure to introduce the 31st president of NAREB, Mr. Donnell Williams. Mr. President, are you there?
Ms. Ruby, can you make President Williams a co-host, please? You can go ahead and give the description of our event, Madam Rose.
Will do. So today we have two presenters directly from FICO. My clients, if I have clients and they don't get approved for a loan and I say was because of your FICO score, they ask me, who is FICO and why is he keeping me from getting qualified? So we get to hear directly from FICO. As you all know, this is the main credit reporting institution. Ms. Julie Wooding from FICO serves as the Senior Director of FICO. She works with clients, consumers, advocates, and regulators to help them better understand the power of credit scoring technology and its benefits to the financial industry. As a key subject matter expert in FICO Scores Group, Julie works with top-tier lenders in the U.S. to help them evaluate and implement FICO scoring solutions. She delivers in-depth credit scoring training to regulators and lenders, most recently in the US, Canada, Mexico, Spain, Romania, the Philippines, and Qatar. So we're very happy to welcome Julie Woody. As well, we want to welcome Jerry St. Ville. Jerry serves as a FICO director. He is a subject matter expert responsible for cultivating, managing, and supporting FICO's relationships with its clients in the US and Canada, and in supporting of the protecting and growing of the FICO score franchise within each of those markets. Prior to joining FICO in 2014, Jerry was a senior director at Citi for 16 years within Citi's global consumer bank, where he held various positions in credit, risk, and analytic functions. We want to thank both Jerry and Julie for joining us. We enjoyed their presentation at the NAREB Midwinter Conference back in February, and we're looking forward to learning more from them about the FICO scoring system.
Madam Rose, President Williams is with us and he's ready.
Great. Well, it is my honor, before we introduce our presenters, to introduce our president, the 31st president of NAREB, Mr. Donnell Williams. Mr. President.
Thank you so very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see this session is well attended. FICO has been a friend to NAREB, and we're looking for some great information. African Americans, a lower credit score, whether or not it's in
Mr. President, we're losing you.
Community, we need to understand, because I'm on, you hear me?
Yes, you're just kind of fading in and out, but we hear you now.
Okay. Well, look, FICO discussed that you as a trust advisors in your neighborhoods need to understand it. So please pay attention, please take your notes, and let's prosper together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We really appreciate it. And you're so right that this is such an important session. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Julie and to Jerry. They will be doing a presentation for us. And again, ask your questions, do your shout outs and your comments in the chat. Julie and Jerry.
All right. Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you very much to NAREB for inviting us to be here with all of you today. This is absolutely a favorite part of my job, which is talking to audiences and addressing questions. As Jill said, we're going to be looking to answer a lot of the questions at the end of the session. And yes, you're absolutely going to get a copy of the slides. There'll be, I believe it'll be sent out to you after the session. So you don't have to take copious amounts of notes to copy down or take pictures of all the slides. You're going to get them later. And so we are a little bit running behind. I wanted to go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me okay?
We hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Getting nods. All right, let me go ahead. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see.
And can everyone hear me, just in case for
Yep,
later?
I can hear you, Jerry.
Perfect.
All right, one moment. Hang on. Turn on the presentation. All right. Come on, work with me there. All right. Can everybody see the slides?
Not yet.
Right
now.
Okay, now we see the slides. All right, fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Jerry and I are going to kind of tag team on this. And as was discussed, if you have any questions at all, please go ahead and put them in the chat. I know at the end of the session at 4 o'clock, many of you might have to leave. Jerry and I are more than happy to stay on and keep answering questions if you guys want to stay on and have more time. We do want to make sure that we address everybody's questions. As they said, it's a very important topic. So just a little bit about myself. I've been at FICO, for about forever, for about 27 years. I had the pleasure of presenting in February to a NAREB audience, completely enjoyed it, even made some friends in the process. So that was a lot of fun. Really, really happy to be here with you today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. In terms of the, I'm trying to get rid of that window. Sorry about, there we go. Anyway, so for our agenda, we're going to talk about FICO score basics, kind of some fundamentals, maybe defining some terminology and that sort of thing. There's a study that we've recently done, which I think you'll find very interesting, and that is how credit actions impact FICO scores. So for example, something like having a delinquency when you haven't had one before and that sort of thing, how that could impact FICO scores. And then a little bit at the end about credit score confusion. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to start with just kind of a checking your knowledge. Nobody's going to grade your papers, you know. So we're going to walk through a couple questions here. And what I'd like you to do is just think to yourself what you think the answer is. They're all true or false. So the first one, your monthly income is an important item considered in your FICO score. Do you think that's true or false? Just keep it to yourself. We're going to give you the answers at the end after we've presented the information. The second one is having a 30% utilization ratio on your credit cards results in optimal FICO score points. Do you think that's true or false? All right, paying down credit card balances has a positive impact on your FICO score. True or false? Authorized user accounts are considered in the FICO score calculation. True or false? And then the following types of inquiries are considered in a FICO score: mortgage application, department store application, employment screening, and insurance application. So again, towards the end, Jerry's going to go through this slide again, and he'll give you the answers, but I'd like you to kind of keep in mind what you think the answers are, and perhaps you might learn something today. So I'd like to start just very briefly, a little bit about FICO scores and FICO the company. We were the first company over 30 years ago who pioneered and started the idea of building a predictive model based on credit bureau data. That was the birth of the FICO score. Again, we've been developing FICO scores for 30 years. We do have FICO scores with the 5 major credit bureaus. That's 3 in the US and 2 in Canada. And we have FICO scores in over 30 countries around the world. Obviously, the FICO scores power billions and billions of decisions a year, but I think one of the really important things to keep in mind, and as you are talking to your customers, the folks you're talking to who are looking to buy a home, it's really important to note that 90% of all lending decisions in the US rely on the FICO score. And I will say that for today, it's 100% of mortgage decisions, as long as that mortgage lender is going to resell their mortgage loan to Fannie or Freddie, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so very high level, obviously there are 5 areas or information zones on a credit bureau report. I'm sure you're all well familiar with looking at these, but there are a couple of things I'd like to point out. Now, zone 1, the personal identifying information, any information that you see there on that part of the report is never, 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 never used in a FICO score in the US. Okay, and it's really, really important because you might see information there, you might see employment information or income information or whatever it is that somebody has put on that part of the report. That information is absolutely never used in a FICO score in the US. All right, so really important to keep in mind. However, the other 4 zones, 2 through 5, where we have public records, collection items, trade line or account information and updates, as well as inquiries, are definitely, so 2 through 5 are fair game for putting in the FICO score. And Jerry's going to share a lot more information later with you about inquiries. Because I know you're probably starting to think about those questions about, oh, wait a minute, what kind of inquiries will impact a FICO score? And Jerry's going to answer all those questions. So now this is actually a really, really important slide. What it says here is that FICO scores are designed to rank order risk. Whoops, whoops, whoops. So it's so important, I'm going to say it again. FICO scores are designed to rank order risk. And what does that really mean? What we're looking at here, we have these 4 score ranges, and on top of each one, we have some little green people and we have a little blue person. The little green people represent future good payers, and the little blue person represents a future bad payer, or one that would go 90 days delinquent or worse. Now let's say that we just focus on the 640 box here, or the stair step, right? We have 5 little green people, 1 little blue person, or 5 future good payers, 1 future bad payer. You can think of that as a ratio of good-bad odds, where if this population, if we were to say that an applicant population scoring 640 had good bad odds of about 5 to 1, and if we were a bank and if we approved them all, we could expect approximately 5 of them to go on and be a good payer and 1 of them to go on and be a bad payer. Now, certainly, if we take a look towards the right side of the slide, a higher score range, you see a lot more future good payers for every bad payer. And that's really what we want the FICO score to do, is to rank order risk, right? The higher scores mean somebody whose score is higher has a better likelihood or probability of being a good payer, and the lower score, they have a higher probability or likelihood of being a poor payer or somebody who's going to pay delinquent. All right, so that's really kind of what we expect the FICO score to do. Thankfully, this FICO score does a really, really nice job doing that. All right, now this is absolutely one of my favorite slides in the presentation. It gives you a lot of information about how a FICO score model really works. So what we're looking at here, I'll draw your attention to the title. It's an example, right? All of the numbers are made up, right? So none of this is real. I mean, it's a good example, but it is an example. And then it's partial because what we're looking at here is a kind of truncated version of a scorecard. What we're looking at here is a set of 5 characteristics or variables that would be in the FICO score model. And a typical FICO scorecard has between 10 and 15 characteristics, right? So it's kind of a shorter version, but I think it serves as a really good example. So let's take a look in the upper left-hand corner. You'll note that we have 5 categories of information. And again, Jerry is going to tell you a lot more about those 5 categories, but they're shown in order of importance. The first one is payment history. So within a payment history category, we'll have, in a FICO score model, we'll have a number of different characteristics or variables looking at and measuring how a consumer is paying their bills and whether they're paying them on the time. This characteristic example we're looking at is number of months since the most recent serious delinquency. Now, serious delinquency to a FICO score is always 90 days delinquent or worse. All right, the next column, the attributes, are basically the categories into which a consumer could fall. So for example, if you're looking at a consumer file, they've never had any serious delinquency, they would fall on the first attribute, that no serious delinquency, and for that, they would get 75 points. All right, you'll note the next attribute is 0 to 5, and if there are months since the most recent serious delinquency was in the last 5 months, meaning they were just delinquent a few months ago, for that, they would only get 10 points, right? And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? The higher FICO score is reflecting a better future risk, and a lower FICO score is reflecting a more risky or higher level of future risk. So the behavior of having never had serious delinquency in the past is actually very, very good, and that is kind of awarded by giving 75 points. The fact that somebody had serious delinquency just recently is really risky, and for that, they get a smaller number of points. Now, the way it works in an actual FICO scorecard is that you would look at each and every characteristic in the model or in the scorecard, figure out, based on the consumer report you're looking at, which attribute the consumer would fall into and how many points are associated with that attribute. Then you would sum up all the points, and that's their FICO score. All right, and that's as easy as it gets. So Jerry's going to revisit this slide again in the future. In a little while, but for now, let's go ahead and move on. Whoops, I went 2 slides. So I wanted to share some information with you too about the fact that we have a lot of different FICO score versions, right? You've probably heard about FICO score 8, FICO score 9. You might not have heard about FICO score 10 and 10T. So these latest 2 FICO score versions are out and available just within the last couple months. They're brand new. They're now available at all 3 bureaus. And why do we have so many different FICO score versions, right? Every time we redevelop a FICO score model, which is about, every 4 or 5 years or so, we build it so that it's more predictive than the one before, right? So 10 and 10T are more predictive than all the rest. 9, when it was developed, is more predictive than all the rest, and so on. All right. Now, again, we're building and redeveloping FICO score models every so often so that a lender can choose which version they want. But I do want to draw your attention to the last bullet down at the bottom of the slide. It says mortgage lenders who will resell their loans to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac must use the versions endorsed by Fannie and Freddie. At Equifax, that's FICO score 5. That's the one that's underlined. At TransUnion, it's FICO score 4. And at Experian, it's FICO score 2. Now you might say to yourself, are you kidding? Seriously? Those are really old scores. And it's true, it's true. And you might be wondering why Fannie and Freddie have never endorsed a more recent version. Honestly, when FICO score 8 was out and available and they were ready to do their evaluation and endorse it, that was when the last Great Recession hit. So they put that on the shelf and never moved forward. And then FICO score 9, they had also done their evaluation and they were, we believe, ready to endorse FICO score 9. And then of course, another competitor came into the market. So right now, Fannie and Freddie and FHFA are working very hard on basically a model comparison. We believe in about a year, they'll come out with a decision as to which new score versions are going to be endorsed for mortgage lending. But at least for now, we're stuck with 5 and 4 and 2 for mortgage lending. The good news is those scores really still work very, very well. I do want to make a very brief mention to the fact that we also have the auto score and the bank card score. And those are industry-specific scores that can be used by auto and bank card lenders. All right, very briefly, I just want to share a little bit of information with you here. Obviously, we're building FICO scores for the 3 bureaus in the US and the 2 in Canada. The way it works is when we go to develop a FICO score model on one of these bureaus' data, we get a data set from them, depersonalized, so we don't have any of that personal information. We develop the models on that data set, and then put the models or the formula in a piece of software. We then deliver that software to the bureau. They implement it on their system. And the way a FICO score gets updated and calculated is that, let's say I'm just looking at Equifax, all right? So if a lender requests a score from Equifax, Equifax will take their data, right? Because they're collecting the data on the Consumer Credit Bureau report. They'll take their data for that consumer, feed it through our formula or software to calculate the FICO score, and then Equifax will return that score to the lender. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, so I do want to share a little bit of information here about when we build a FICO score model, we don't just build one big scorecard. We actually build a set of scorecards. And for FICO score 10, this is what we call our segmentation. And for FICO score 10, it's a total of 13 scorecards. So each consumer file that is going to be scored on one out of the 13 scorecards. And which one of the 13 scorecards is determined based on kind of a decision tree. So sitting at the top of the decision tree, there's a question, right? We're looking at a consumer file. We're trying to decide which one of the 13 scorecards should be used. But first, we're going to ask a question. Looking at that consumer file, is there presence of serious delinquency or derogatory items? And again, serious delinquency for the FICO score will always be thought of as 90 days delinquent or worse. So if the answer is no, then the consumer file would fall down the left side of the tree, and that consumer file is going to be scored by one of 8 non-derogatory scorecards, right? If you think about it, we looked at our example partial FICO score model a little bit earlier, and one of our questions was, how long has it been since somebody's had serious delinquency, right? But if here on the left side of this tree, we have an entire set of consumers who've never had serious delinquency, you can see that asking that question or having that characteristic in one of those models would really be meaningless, right? There would be no value in doing so. So by separating those with prior delinquency versus those with prior delinquency, we can really kind of segment the US population, the consumer population, into these 13 different populations. And then we build a separate scorecard on each and every one. All right, so on the left-hand side, on the non-derogatory side, we have 8 scorecards. And which one of those 8 scorecards is used is going to be based on information such as thickness of file, right? Or how many accounts do they have? Age of file, how long have they had credit experience, as well as recency of new openings. All right, so that is going to determine which one of those 8 is used. Now, if we go back to the top and we look for the presence of serious delinquency or derogatory items, if the answer to that question is yes, then that consumer is going to be scored by one of 5 derogatory scorecards. And again, which one of those 5 is going to be used is going to be based on information such as the presence of public records, their worst rating or delinquency level, and level of indebtedness. But it doesn't matter which one of these 13 scorecards is used to score out any single consumer file. The end result is their FICO score 10. All right. And this is kind of a similar way to the way it works for FICO 9 or 8 or whatever, right? Every time we do a redevelopment, we reassess the segmentation to see if it needs to change. All right. So now the next section is going to talk about those 5 categories of FICO score predictive characteristics. And Jerry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Julie. Sound check. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So as Julie referenced in the partial FICO score model, the FICO score characteristics really fall into 5 major categories. And they're listed here in the order of importance: payment history, outstanding debt, credit length, pursuit of credit, and credit mix. And I'll get into a little bit. I'll go into depth in each of these in the next slide. So next slide, please, Julie. So let's focus first on payment history. Payment history contributes 35% to the FICO score. And so what are some of the underlying questions that are asked when looking at someone's credit report and looking at payment history? Some of the factors include how recent is the most recent delinquency. If you remember in the slide that Julie showed, someone with a delinquency that is further away versus most current would score higher. The other dimension that this category looks at is the severity of delinquency. Has it gone 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, or worse? Or how many credit obligations does the consumer have? So we thoroughly look at the consumer's credit report across those 3 dimensions to assess how much of the FICO score will increase based on payment history. Next slide, please. So to give you an example, just looking at this chart, I wanted to give you an example as to how differences in one's differences in one's delinquency is reflective of one's risk. So if you look at the chart, on the x-axis, you have in months. Months is the most recent delinquency. On the y-axis, we have how we measure risk, which is 90 days or more past due. And what you can see is, for consumers who have a delinquency, within 0 to 11 months from when they are scored, our data shows that they represent a higher level of risk as compared to someone with, for example, 20 to 23 and so on. So you can see that the further away is that major delinquency from the scoring date, the lower the risk. Here, next slide, please. Outstanding debt. This represents 30% of the 30% of the FICO score. And what we're measuring here is the amount of debt that the consumer is using based on the amount of credit available to them. So, we ask the questions: how much does the consumer owe to creditors? What percent of the available credit are they using? And what percent of the installment loans is still outstanding? Because these are all measures of the degree in which someone is indebted, which has demonstrated and rank ordered well with the credit risk. Next slide, please. Just to give you an example, again, on the x-axis, you have looking at debt from a ratio perspective, looking at utilization of one's debt. So total balances on revolving debt, such as on your credit cards, divided by your total credit limits. And again, if you look at someone with a utilization, revolving debt utilization between 0 and 19 represents better risk, a lower risk than someone with in the 80 to 99 category. And again, risk is defined as 90 days past due or greater. I believe some of this is intuitive, but next slide, please, Julie. Credit history length. This is a measure of really trying to, and this represents 15% of the FICO score. It's a measure of how experienced or how much time has a consumer has had in managing credit or having credit. And because we do find in our data that, consumers who have had credit for a longer period of time represent better risk than those with less time on file. So I'll demonstrate that on the next slide. Thanks, Julie. Again, looking at the y-axis, under 2 years, people with less experience at credit, have demonstrated to be of higher risk than consumers with greater, let's say, over 10 years of credit history. Okay. Another factor, another contributing factor to the FICO score, it represents 10% of the FICO score, is it measures, the pursuit of credit. So inquiries. This is when someone is seeking credit. So number of recent credit inquiries that are on the credit bureau. And the next slide will get into a little bit more detail about how we measure this and how this impacts the FICO score. So this is really a measure of looking at someone's pursuit of new credit. Next slide. So when we look at the pursuit of new credit based on looking at number of inquiries, at least, what you can see here is, on the x-axis again, the number of inquiries, and we measure inquiries in the past 12 months. And on the y-axis, it's, again, based on 90 more days past due. But what's different about this chart as compared to the prior chart is you see that so we have 2 bars per value on the x-axis. And what this represents is 2 populations, or 2 segments measured under the same characteristic. What we see overall between, when you look across the young thin files, which are consumers with, let's say, less than 3 years on file, with a few trades, and mature thick files are everyone else, is that for each segment, the risk goes up based on a higher number of inquiries pursued. However, what's different is that the mature thick file, as you can see, represents a lower level of credit risk as compared to the thin files for a given number of inquiries. What this highlights is the value and power of segmentation. If you remember, Julie referenced that the FICO score is not a one-size-fits-all scorecard. It's made up of 13 scorecards, which really allows us to create a more refined view of a consumer's credit risk. Next slide, please. So what types of inquiries are considered in the FICO score? FICO scores only consider consumer-initiated inquiries for credit posted in the last 12 months. What does the FICO score not consider? What type of inquiries does the FICO score not consider? It does not consider promotional inquiries or account review inquiries. So promotional inquiry is, for example, a lender wants to offer you a card, and you're looking at your credit bureau to get assessment of your credit risk, so that they can offer you something, and you may get something in the mail, for example. An account review is, how lenders, periodically look at your credit bureau to assess their risk and manage their book. And again, consumer disclosure inquiries, or where one might find their score, seek their score from the credit bureau. And again, you have insurance and employment inquiries. So the ones in the bottom do not contribute to the FICO score, do not impact the FICO score. only consumer-initiated inquiries can impact the FICO score, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. Next slide, Julie. So I want to talk or shed some light on, again, a little bit more detail about how inquiries are handled in the FICO score. So if you put yourself, if you draw your eyes to the right side of the slide where we have the scoring date, you know, at the time that one is scored, the FICO score calculation only considers consumer-initiated inquiries in the past 12 months. But there are some other enhancements that we have and that we have in place related to certain types of inquiries. So, for example, if you look at from the scoring date, 30 days prior to the scoring date, or within any auto, mortgage, or student loan inquiries, within 30 days of the scoring date, have no effect on the FICO score. So, you know, as one is, you know, shopping for an auto or for a mortgage, for example, any inquiries, any of the auto, mortgage, or student loan inquiries that are within 30 days of a scoring date have no impact on the FICO score, no effect on the FICO score. Outside of the 30-day window, you know, for auto, mortgage, and student loan inquiries, what we do is we dedupe auto inquiries that are done within a 45-day period into a single inquiry. Similarly, with a multiple mortgage inquiries within a 45-day window are deduped as a single inquiry. And why do we do this? Because you think about the buying behavior of, you know, a consumer, you know, when they're shopping for an auto and shopping for a mortgage, they are doing, you know, it's very common that they could have, you know, multiple hits against it. Multiple lenders are looking at their credit bureau as the consumer shopping for that new auto and the mortgage within a very tight time period. And so, to recognizing that behavior, the FICO score dedupes inquiries within a 45-day period for those types of inquiries. And it does represent a different and lower level of risk as compared to if a consumer was shopping for multiple credit cards over a short period of time. So it's the empirical reason as to why we do this. Next slide, please. Credit mix. Credit mix is a view of, you know, what is the variety and types of credit that a consumer has had. So what we see when we evaluate, you know, millions of records, we can see that a consumer who has had experience in managing multiple forms of credit, you know, spanning revolving and installment, do represent a lower level of credit risk than one who hasn't. And this represents 10% of the score. Okay. Minimum scoring criteria. So not everyone is able to get a FICO score. Not everyone is able to get a FICO score because the FICO score, we have minimum criteria in place for a FICO score to be calculated. And the reason we do that is we want to ensure that the information that we are scoring is recent and robust enough so that what the three-digit number that results is a good representation of the credit risk associated with that consumer. So if these three conditions are not met, a consumer record cannot get a FICO score. So for one, there can be no indication that a consumer that there's a deceased indicator on the record. A trade line needs to be open for at least 6 months. A trade line that is open sooner, if there's no indication of a trade, if the trade line is open fewer than 6 months, then one cannot get a FICO score. If a trade line is updated, a trade line has to be updated in the last 6 months as well. So we need to be able to see that the information, a consumer's credit report has been updated in the past 6 months, and the trade line has been open at least 6 months. Next slide, please. In addition to, so one of the other outputs from the credit bureau that a lender receives is our reason codes. A reason code, you know, the FICO score returns up to 4 reason codes, plus a 5th one if the inquiry had an effect, a negative effect in one FICO score. So, and it's not one of the top 4 reason codes. The reason codes really allow a consumer to understand what are the factors in order of importance that contributed to them receiving the score that they did. If we can go to the next slide, please. So going back to this hopefully familiar picture, this partial model, let's look at, for example, one of the characteristics, payment history. If you look at payment history, for the characteristics, number of months since the most recent serious delinquency, what I've put a box around is where, you know, the person, the attribute that the person fell in, who's been evaluated. So let's say for this particular consumer record, there was no serious delinquency on their credit report. If that was the case for that particular characteristic, that record would be assigned 75 points. The number to the right of the 75 represents the delta, or the difference between the highest number of possible points available for that characteristic and what the consumer received. What the consumer received. So the max was 75 for that characteristic, and they received 75, so the delta is 0. Looking at outstanding debt, if you look at the overall, if you look at the characteristic overall utilization on revolving trade, and if someone's utilization was within the 20 to 49, fell into the 20 to 49 bucket, they would be assigned 45 points. The FICO score was assigned 45 points. But if you look at where the asterisk is in this for this characteristic, the asterisk is on 65. So they on this consumer's record, they were 20 points lower than the maximum number of points available for that characteristic. And the same applies if you look at the next few. I'm not going to go through each one individually. The same applies for the other remaining characteristics, where the number to the right represents the delta between the maximum number of points for that characteristic and what the consumer scores. Next slide, please. Oh, so based on what you see here, maybe in the chat room, what would you say would be the first person's top reason code? Based on what I described as the first reason code represents where the consumer, where there was the greatest difference between the maximum number of points scored and where the consumer scored. I'm looking at the chat. All right, I'll give it away. Number one, so the top reason code would be associated with the number of months in file, because if you could see for that characteristic, they were 40 points away. They scored 40 points lower than the maximum points that could be possible for that characteristic. What would be the next? What would be the second reason code? Next. Pursuit of new credit. As you can see here, it's 25 points, so it's the next highest delta. So when when a consumer receives or can see their top 4 reason codes, it gives them a sense as to what are the factors that cause their FICO score to not be as high as possible, because it gives you, it highlights characteristics with the greatest delta from the maximum number of points. Next slide. So going back to the questions that Julie highlighted at the start of the presentation, how about I'm going to ask each question, and maybe in the chat you could answer true or false. And I'll say what I see, mostly the type of answers I see in the chat room. Your monthly income is an important item considered in your FICO score.
Getting a lot of falses.
I am very pleased to see that people recognize that the answer to that question is false. Having a 30% utilization ratio on your credit cards results in optimal FICO score points. True or false? Seems like a few more truths than falses, but let's see the answer, Julie. The answer is false. Lower, when it comes to utilization, lower is better. And so one's optimal FICO score is a function of a consumer's entire credit profile. So you really can't say that having a 30% utilization ratio on your credit cards results in an optimal FICO score. Paying down credit card balances has a positive impact on your FICO score. Looks like a resounding true from the audience. Great job. If you remember, outstanding debt is the second most important category. Is the second largest contributing factor to FICO score. It represents 30% of the FICO score. So paying down debt has a material impact on one's score. Authorized user accounts are considered in the FICO score calculation. True or false? Great to see that the answer is true. Yes. If I have, call it, my child as an authorized user, if I'm an authorized user on someone else's account, that would be considered in my FICO score calculation. The following types of inquiries are considered in the FICO score: mortgage application, it's not true. It's not multiple choice. I'm asking for each one individually. So true. Let's see the answer, Julie. Correct. So the mortgage application inquiries are considered in the FICO score. If you remember what I said, consumer-initiated inquiries are contribute to the FICO score. Within the past 12 months, of course. Department store application inquiries, true or false? Seems like a resounding true. Julie, correct. Employment screening, a resounding false. An insurance application, looks like a unanimously false. So thank you very much. You did a great job and captured a lot of the information that Julie and I had to get through. Julie, you want to take it from here? Or do I have another?
Sure do. Thanks, Jerry. All right. Well, thank you so much. Hope you guys really enjoyed that section. It's one of my favorite sections. Has so much information about FICO scores and what goes into them and so on. Okay, so the next section, what I wanted to share with you, there was a study that FICO did, their development team did, just a little while ago. They published the results in a blog, but it was a study about certain actions that consumers often take and how they impact FICO scores. And it's really kind of funny. Part of our job, what Jerry and I do is, we talk to lenders and banks and they ask us questions about FICO scores. And they'll often say something like, well, what if we did this? Or what if a consumer did that? How would that change their score? And the funny thing is that most often the answer we get starts with, it depends. And you'll see from the study, it's absolutely true. Like what the impact is to anybody's FICO score based on a single action is going to depend on so much other information in their file. So let's go ahead and get started on this one. So the FICO score that we were looking at in the analysis was FICO score 9. There were 5 different sample credit profiles, and you can think of them as 5 individual consumers were literally identified on our development file. And the reason that we selected these 5 is just because they kind of, for example, let's say one of them was a 700, right? They kind of had the look and feel of what kind of a typical 700 looks like. We looked at the actions of missing payments, increasing or decreasing revolving debt, and opening new credit accounts. And if you do want to read the full blog, and I totally recommend that you do that, and I don't know if you've signed up to receive the FICO blogs, there's just a ton of information. And if you go to that website there, and there's the link, you can see that. And just in case you weren't here in the beginning, yes, you're going to get a copy of the slides at the end of the presentation. All right, so I wanted to share with you a little bit more information before we dive in. Really important things to keep in mind. I'm hoping that you're not sitting on the edge of your, well, I'm hoping you're sitting on the edge of your seat, but I hope you're not sitting on at the edge of your seat saying, she's going to give me the answers about, what the impact is of these things. So I want you to keep in mind, this research was done on a very few consumer credit profiles, 5. The actual results may and likely will vary. These are just a few examples because what we wanted to do here was to give you a sense of, if let's say the same action is taken by somebody who has a FICO score of 780 versus 600, how is the impact going to be different, right? So that's what we're looking at. The next point is the same action can have very different impacts to a FICO score depending on the starting profile. Absolutely true. And the change in credit risk represented by each action is different for each profile. So let's jump into it and kind of take a look at what we have. So we've just put fake names on them. We have Sophia, Mike, David, Rachel, and Maria across the top. Down the left-hand side, we have the data elements that we're looking at in this table. So I know there's a lot of information here. The first row is their current FICO score. You'll note first that they are sort of ordered by FICO score, right? Sophia on the left-hand side with a 607 absolutely has the lowest FICO score of this set. And then we have the number of credit accounts. A couple of things to note. You'll note that David, the guy in the middle, has very few credit accounts, only 2, whereas some of the others have a lot more credit experience. The years of credit history in the next row, again, David only has 2 years of credit history, right? So we're going to refer to him again and again as sort of the one with less credit experience, right? So you can think of him as sort of representing perhaps, a consumer with less credit experience. And then we have the revolving utilization. It's very interesting that, as Jerry talked about, revolving utilization is a really big driver of the FICO score. It's not terribly surprising that in this case, right, the person with the lowest FICO score, Sophia on the left, also has the highest revolving utilization. Right? Then we have total revolving open balances, in terms of how much revolving debt they have. And then delinquency. Sophia on the left is the only one with a delinquency. She had a 30-day delinquency in the last year. All the others have no delinquency. And then poor Sophia also has a charge-off on her file. She had a charge-off in the last 2 years. Right? So without question, it's not surprising with a high level of utilization, the delinquency and the charge-off, Sophia is the one with the lowest score, right? I'm sure that surprises nobody. David is kind of characteristically as kind of that thin file, new to credit, less credit experience. And then the other 3 are what we would consider kind of thick, mature files. All right, so now let's take a look at what actions were taken against them. And again, I know there's a ton of numbers in this slide, but what I did here, if you'll take a look at the first row, right? The row at the top, we have their current FICO score, which we already looked at. The next row says miss a payment by 30 days. So if Sophia, standing at her 607, were to miss a payment by 30 days, the analysis that we did estimated that her score would fall to between a 570 and a 590. You can think of that as an average score loss of 27 points, right? So here we are, 27 points, on average that she would lose from taking that action. And what I really want to kind of take a look at here is if we look at that average change across all 5 of these people, how it differs, right? And we're going to look at it in a little bit more detail on the next couple slides. But just wanted to orient you on this one. The next one, for example, is missed payment by 90 days. You can see across the board that results in a larger average score loss, right? Regardless of kind of where they started. They're reducing revolving account balances by 25%. The next one, they all increase in score from doing that because they're reducing the revolving balances and therefore reducing their revolving utilization. The next one, take out a new $5,000 personal loan. Again, they are each decreasing in score, but by different amounts. And then the last one, maxing out the credit cards, again, we're all losing points, but by a very different amount. So like I said, we're going to dive into these a little bit more. But what I really want you to take away from this is that the impact of the FICO score to the FICO score of each credit action is really dependent upon the starting credit profile, right? As my lenders come to me and say, well, what if, they never were delinquent before and they missed, they went delinquent 30 days delinquent. And I'd say it depends, right? It depends on what the content of their file is, what their FICO score was when they started. And I hope you're beginning to see that now. Then last point too, the bullet at the bottom is really, really important. If the credit file indicates significantly greater or lesser credit risk than before, right? So if the action they take is very, very different from kind of what their situation was before, then a FICO score will change more than if the credit risk is similar before and after the credit action, right? So for example, if you look at Sophia, who had a delinquency and a charge-off, what we can see on her file is that her occurrence of missing a payment by 30 days or 90 days is really not as great on her as it is on the others because she already had delinquency. All right, now I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Let's move on to the next slide. And so what we want to do here is take a look at these in a little bit more detail in terms of kind of the impact. So we're looking at the first 2 impacts, miss a payment by 30 days and miss a payment by 90 days. And again, what we're looking at in the first column there, the 570 to 590, is what we expect or estimate the change in Sophia's FICO score would be from a 607 down to somewhere between a 570 and 590, which would result in an average change of a loss of about 27 points. All right, so certainly what we see here is that all of across the board, right, this new delinquency, whether it's 30 or 90 days delinquent, is going to result in a loss of points for everybody. What we do see, however, is that the missing a payment by 90 days is indeed considered worse, right? So for each and every one of these 5 consumers, they're going to lose more points with a 90-day delinquency than they would with a 30, right? Again, not terribly surprising, but let's take a look at some of the others. Mike and David are going to lose more points than Sophia, right? Sophia has already had delinquency before. She only lost 37 points, and Mike and David have lost 69 and 170 points, right? So we know that Sophia's beginning score of 607 already reflects the fact that she had that prior delinquency. So on top of that old delinquency, a new delinquency is really not going to have as great an impact on her as it does on some of the others, right? Obviously, with losing 170 points, this impact of that 90-day delinquency is the greatest on David, primarily because he has the least credit experience, right? So you can kind of see how they all interact together. And you can't say a 90-day delinquency or whatever is always going to lose, cause a consumer to lose X number of points, right? It's in this case, poor David, he has less credit experience. It's really going to take a hit on his file. And for those who've had a very clean credit file, it's really because that is a 90-day delinquency is such a departure or so different from having a very, very clean credit file. It's going to have a very large impact on those consumers. All right, hope that makes sense. Let's move on to the next one. Now here we're looking at revolving utilization. So same 5 consumers, right? Now we're looking at utilization across the board. Again, we can see that Sophia with 67% had the highest utilization. And we're looking at the impacts of 2 actions. Number 1, reducing revolving account balances by 25% across the board. You can absolutely see everybody got a score increase. That's great. And maxing out their credit cards, right? So taking their utilization, their revolving utilization today from whatever it is and increasing it to 100%, right? So let's take a look here and kind of see what happens. So certainly, it typically has a greater impact on those with lower utilization, right? So Maria, who only had revolving utilization of 12%, right, maxing out her credit cards, she's going to lose, on average 118 points. All right, let's kind of take a look at this. And certainly, David and Rachel and Maria, the 3 who did have the lowest utilization, you can see that the impact on them is the greatest. All right, and certainly the greatest loss is on Maria, who had such a low level of utilization. And again, that's because if she were to take it from 12% to 100% utilization, it's such a dramatic change that it's going to be recognized as the greatest level of risk. Now, interestingly, if we take a look at the middle one, reducing revolving account balances by 25%, what we see here is that, again, it's increasing points and, giving, adding points to the score for everybody. What we see here, though, is Mike, with the 51% utilization, really has the most to gain. And that's why we do see the highest increase there, right? His score increased by 46 points, where everybody else's was a bit lower. And why is it that, he is getting such a larger increase in score? Well, first of all, he is next to Sophia. He's the one with the highest level of utilization, right? So if he were to reduce his revolving account balances by 25%, it would have a tremendous impact on his score. And you might say, well, that's not fair, because Sophia was 67% utilized, and if she reduced her balances by 25%, that's also significant. However, keep in mind that Sophia still had that delinquency, right? So that existing delinquency is still going to be impacting her score, right? So in this case, Mike, when it comes to reducing revolving balances, is kind of the winner, right? He is going to gain the highest number of points by reducing that delinquency. All right, so again, to keep in mind, this research was done on very few credit profiles, 5. Actual results may and likely will vary, right? So I don't want you going away from this and saying, I know exactly what's going to happen, because we know that the same action can have very different impacts to a FICO score, depending on the profile, depending on the initial FICO score. And the change in credit risk represented by each action is different for each profile. But I wanted to give you a sense of an understanding of what sort of actions can be taken and what sort of things influence what kind of impact that change is going to have on the credit file. All right, a little bit more just in terms of FICO scores and kind of these actions that we were talking about in terms of things that a consumer would want to do and not to do in terms of establishing a healthy FICO score. Obviously, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with these, it's important to always pay your bills on time, avoid collections, keep balances low, don't borrow money when you don't need to. Also, it's really, really important to check your credit report for accuracy. And here's the thing, I don't know if you know, and maybe you do. I'm sure you're all aware of the annualcreditreport.com. So annualcreditreport.com is a website from which you can get, for any consumer who has a credit file at the bureaus, can get their credit report for free 1 time a year from each bureau. Now, which was very nice of them, so thank you bureaus for doing that. Interestingly, with the pandemic, Kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, a number of months ago, all three bureaus came out and said that now, because there's so many financial concerns that people are dealing with through the pandemic, that all three bureaus were going to be making available free weekly credit reports. I believe it's through April of 2021. So if you have a consumer and they're needing to look at their credit report kind of on a frequent basis, I highly recommend annualcreditreport.com, where you can get them from all three bureaus on a weekly basis, at least through April. And again, that's something that they're doing and allowing consumers to get as a part of the pandemic, which I highly applaud. I think it's great. The last one there is have credit and manage it responsibly. And of course, the things to avoid, kind of these are the things you don't want to do. Obviously, making late payments, going to collections, high balances and high debt, applying for credit when it's not needed, and closing unused credit cards. I don't know that we've talked about that, but again, closing an unused credit card can automatically impact your revolving utilization, right? By making less revolving credit available, it can increase your revolving utilization, and that can actually absolutely have an impact on your FICO score. All right, moving on. The next section is credit score confusion. And Jerry, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure. Why don't you just jump to the next slide, Julie? So one of the things that we recognize is, first of all, there are different credit scores in the market, and and as a result of that, we see that there's a lot of confusion in the market as to what is a FICO score, and are all FICO scores? Is everything that's 3-digit a FICO score? So, just a couple of foundational points. The FICO score is used by 90% of lenders, of U.S. lenders, and for 90% of the credit decisions. This is just to highlight the importance of not only knowing what your FICO score is, but understanding what impacts the FICO score, given the slides that Julie just referenced, because 90% of the time, lenders will factor that into the decision. So being able to influence your FICO score to the greatest of your ability is to your advantage. But not all credit scores in the market are FICO scores. And how can someone tell the difference? So we're going to do another quick quiz. Another quick quiz. Well, where I'm going to show you, a tagline, and you'll let me know if you think it's a FICO score. And I'll look at the chat room in the meantime. Did you see something that says, get your score? Is it a FICO score? Yes or no? All right. Mostly no. I did see one yes. You don't have to share your name. Get your scores. That is correct. No. Next. If you see get your absolutely free credit score, is it a FICO score? Glad to see that it's mostly no, unanimously. If you see discover your free credit score, is it a FICO score? Great to see, still no's. Next. What's your FICO score? This should be an easy one. That is correct. Yes. If you see what is your FICO score, it's a FICO score. If you see free FICO credit score, is it a FICO score? Go ahead, Julie. FICO score that lenders use. This is a logo that we use as part of our open access program, a program that lenders use to share scores to their consumers. Is it a FICO score? No. Okay. So the theme of this is what you probably recognize is if it isn't called a FICO score, it likely isn't. Another important point that I'll just repeat: if it isn't called a FICO score, it likely isn't. So that's an important takeaway because you might have there are scores in the market that might look and feel like a FICO score, same range, same 3 digits. It often causes consumers to say, well, why is my score X at here and Y there? Now, there could be other reasons for that, but I'll get into that later. Next slide, please. Where can you get your true FICO score? There are a couple of places where you can get your FICO score. You can go to myfico.com. This is a program offered by FICO where you can get not just your score, but the most widely available scores in the market. Experian.com. We also have a program called Open Access. This is a program that we started, I would say, about 6-7 years ago, where for the lenders who are pulling a FICO score, we've enabled them to share the score that they're pulling with their consumers. So many of you, through your banking relationship, might be able to see your FICO score on a periodic basis based on the frequency in which the lender is pulling your score. And also, we've expanded the program to allow credit and financial counselors to be able to share their FICO scores. So another link, which is not on the slide, but if you go to www.ficoscore.com, you'll be able to see the lenders who participate in the Open Access program, as well as the credit and financial counselors who participate in the program. Next slide. This is just a bit of a drill down on some of the information available in the myfico.com. As you can see, you get your score. There's not, as Julie showed in the prior slide, there's not just one score, one FICO score. There are various versions of the FICO score and various versions within each credit bureau. So this is an example of the FICO score for, FICO score 4, FICO, the auto score, and the bankrupt score. So various versions of the FICO score so that you can understand the various ways in which a lender might be looking at you. Now, it is up to a lender to decide, outside of mortgage, to determine what version of the score they will use to make a decision. So you can't assume that your bank is going to be using, one version versus the other. It's up to the lender to choose what version of the score they will be planning to use for decisioning. And Julie?
All right. Thank you so much, Jerry. Nice job on that. Hope that's, again, really, really good information for you. So we've gotten to another one of my favorite parts of the presentation. This is going to require group participation. So get ready in the chat box. What we're going to do here is guess the score. And Jerry, I am not able to see the chat box, so I'm hoping you can take a look at it and kind of tell me what you're seeing. That would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to look at 4 different examples of consumers looking at their credit report. So for example, here's our first one, Oscar Oldtimer. Keep in mind, we're looking at a credit bureau report that was pulled as of September 1 of 2020. Oscar has 3 trade lines. He has a bank card with an $800 balance, an auto loan, which looks like it's paid off, and a retail account, which has no balance. He has a current rating everywhere. He's not delinquent, and he has no historical delinquency. Now, the name of the game is guess the score. So what I'd like you to do is just think about, the 5 categories of information that Jerry went through. What do you think Oscar's score might be, right? I mean, if we were in front of each other in an audience, I could say, what do you think it's going to be, high or low, right? It's probably going to be a high score. He's pretty good, doesn't have a lot of revolving debt, no historical delinquency. But I'd like you to enter into the chat box what you think Oscar's score might be.
Now, there are a couple of answers. So, Julie, you want me to just read off a few that I
think? Yeah, just read off a couple. That'd be great.
720, 825, 800, 800 plus, 750. So definitely in the 750 plus area.
Okay. Yeah, you guys are right on it. So Oscar's score is a 787. Now you'll remember that Jerry talked about the reason codes and the fact that the reason codes are delivered in order of importance. So let's look at his reason codes. His first one is proportion of balances to credit limits on revolving accounts. right? And you might look at this and say, you've got to be kidding me, right? He has a bank card, or actually a bank card and a retail account with, $5,500 in credit limits. He has only a $800 balance. You're crazy, right? That's his first reason code. But now that we know exactly how reason codes are derived, what we really understand about this is, of all the characteristics in the model, this reason code is associated with the characteristic that on which he lost, in a sense, the highest number of points on that characteristic, right? So what it basically tells us is that the largest impact on Oscar's score is that he has an $800 balance. So it also is a really good example of the idea that reason codes, when you see them on a very high scoring account, might seem a little silly, right? Certainly, if somebody has a lower score, they're very, very important and meaningful, and they're absolutely going to tell the person, here's why your score wasn't higher, right? It's going to perhaps not seem as meaningful for somebody with a really high score, but in the same way, they're calculated in the same way, right? That information about his revolving balances, that is the biggest reason as to why his score wasn't higher. Okay. All right, let's take a look at Oscar's friend. Her name is Shirley Short Timer. She has pretty much the same credit information that Oscar did. Has some newer open dates. I guess that is leading us to the short timer instead of old timer. And if we think about the 5 categories, right, the date opened or the length of credit experience is category 3, right, representing only 15% of the information in the FICO score. So I think everybody would agree that she has a shorter time on file, and therefore her FICO score is likely to be less than or lower than Oscar's, but how much lower, right? From category 1, which is payment history, she's good, right? Category 2, she has the same information as Oscar. It's really only on category 3 where she is not doing as well as Oscar did. So what do you think that would do to Shirley's score?
See the 680, 720, 725, 750.
Okay, nice job. I don't know who said 750, but you give yourself a gold star. Yeah, you're right. So Shirley gets a 753, right? He was a 787. So what we can see is, again, categories 1 and 2, is she paying her payments on time, and how is she utilizing her revolving debt? Those 2 categories, she's doing really well. So even though she has a shorter time on file, because the first 2 categories are so strong that her shorter time in file is not going to hurt her a whole bit, right? She still has a 753, which is a very, very nice score. But let's take a look at her reason codes. The first one is length of time accounts have been established. Again, that is the biggest, the characteristic or the factor about her score, her credit file, that has the biggest impact on why her score wasn't higher. The second one is proportion of balances to credit limits on revolving accounts, which is the same thing we saw on Oscar. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's go ahead and look at their other friend, Richard Recovery. My goodness, Richard has a lot going on. My goodness, he has all sorts of different types of trades. He has, let's see, a balance on his bank card, but it's not too bad, not too high. He has an auto finance loan where he has a high balance on his installment loan. But look at the historical delinquency column. In the lower end, it looks like about maybe 6 years ago, he had a 90-day delinquency, and 5 years ago, he had a charge-off. Down in the bottom section, he had a tax lien about 6 years ago for $10,000, and he has a couple credit inquiries. Wow. Richard is really kind of quite the mix, but I will draw your attention to his last name. All right, so now I'd like you to guess. What do you think Richard's score might be?
$675, $650, $620.
All right, very good. Is anybody surprised? All right, so Richard Recovery, thank you, Jerry. Richard Recovery gets a 702, and you might say, are you kidding me? But remember, his last name is Recovery, meaning, yes, 5 or 6 years ago, he had some concerns. He had some financial concerns, had some serious delinquency, but since then, He has paid everything perfectly on time. He's not abusing and going out of control on his credit. So he's doing pretty well there. And I think it's a really good example of the idea that, yes, past delinquency is going to impact you for a period of time, but at some point, as it gets older and older and older, as long as the consumer's paying well, that past delinquency is going to have a lesser and lesser impact. Okay, so his first reason code, without a doubt, account not paid as agreed and or legal item filed, that's absolutely referring to the presence of the 90-day delinquency, the charge-off, and the tax lien. Okay, it also is dinging him for a couple inquiries. All right, we have one last one person to look at, their credit file. This one is Robin Ranaway. All right, now Robin has a lot of credit experience, only a $200 balance. Looks like she had a charge off about 6 years ago, had a 90-day delinquency 4 years ago, had a 30-day delinquency, has a couple inquiries. Oh boy, hers is kind of a tough one. What do you think Robin's score might be?
$700 plus, 680, 620, 615, 620, 725.
All right.
660.
All right, good guesses. However, it's really, really important to keep in mind, Robin Ranaway is not going to get a FICO score. What I'd like you to draw your attention to is the column on the right, the date reported, right? This report was run as of September of 2020. No lender has reported anything on her in at least the last 2 years, right? We don't know where Robin went, but Robin ran away. And as Jerry talked about, one of the requirements for getting a FICO score calculated is that there has to be at least one trade line on the file, which was updated in the last 6 months, right? And again, we do that to make sure that the information we're looking at in the consumer file is currently or recently reported and a current reflection of that consumer level risk, right? Nothing has been reported here in at least 2 years. Poor Robin is not going to get a FICO score. All right, and that is the end of our presentation today. I think we're actually almost exactly on time. I'm going to stop sharing so we can go back to seeing your smiling faces. Jerry and I absolutely have time. I know the session's only supposed to go until 4 o'clock, but Jerry and I have additional time. We want to make sure that we get a lot of questions answered. And Jill, I think you're going to be the one helping us out and reading us some of those questions.
Yes, ma'am. I think you told us that you have a hard stop at 4:30. Is that still the case? Okay.
Yep.
We can stay on that long. In fact, we'll take questions and your answers because I have compiled some questions up until about 4:20, 4:25, and then we'll give some last minute announcements and then move forward, okay? But there were so many questions. I was like, oh my God. So here we go. I'm not going to waste any more time. Here we go. I recall Vice President Kamala Harris highlighting that rent payments are supposed to be included in FICO score modeling. Is this true or will they ever be included?
Yep. Yeah, Jerry, I don't know if you want that one or you want me to take it. It's up to you.
And let's try to stick to like 1 minute answers so that we can get a lot of these questions in. Okay.
Go ahead, Joey.
Okay, very good. So the answer is yes, kinda. So the good news is that as of FICO score 9, the FICO score 9 was the first FICO score that did include rental information when it's reported on the Bureau. So now since FICO score 9, we have 10 and 10T. They also are considering rental data. The scores, however, prior to FICO score 9 did not. How's that for a 1 minute answer?
Oh my goodness, you did like 30 seconds. You're awesome. Okay, here we go from Shireen Henez. Why are there 3 different agencies that provide credit scores and how do they translate into a FICO score and how's that calculated? I think you pretty much answered that. So when we send out the presentation or email us at nareb@nareb.com and you'll get that question answered. Okay, which service is best to review your credit for buyers? That's from Pamela Hewley.
I mean,
Which service is best to review your credit for home buyers? I guess what she's asking is which of the three would yield the high, typically trends to yield the higher scores? None. Kind of all over the place.
there's not an answer that says,
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
The FICO score, it's a function of the data within each of the credit bureaus. And
Okay. And I think a lot of people probably wanted to ask that, so there's no dumb questions.
Well, here's the, no dumb questions at all. One other thing to add, and that is that, as Jerry said, right, the score is going to be based on the information that's reported to each bureau. You can often have lenders who report to one or two of the bureaus, but not all three. So the best thing to do, is to take a look at, your FICO scores. For example, you could go to myfico.com and get your FICO scores across all three bureaus. And then you're not just getting one score version, you're getting, kind of as Jerry showed, a number of different score versions. However, I will say if you do go there, then you do have to purchase the scores.
Got you. Okay, Dorothy Jones wants to know, when does a bankruptcy or a Chapter 7 drop off of your credit? How long will it count against you?
Jill, I believe within as long as it's in the credit report, we look at it, but at least 7 years, or as long as that information.
The rule of thumb is that the delinquency information can stay on for 7 years unless it's a bankruptcy, and a bankruptcy can stay for 10.
Yep.
Okay. There was a lot of commentary going back and forth in the chat about some of the advocacy work that NAREB and other minority trade orgs, but mainly us, have done to kind of fight fight for being able to use the more modern versions of FICO scores. And that led to a question from Maurice Muhammad that said, is it true that FICO score 9 allows for the ability of minority buyers a greater chance of getting funded for a loan? And that was prefaced by, typically minority buyers have maybe lower incomes and lower utilization and that kind of thing. So the newer models would trend better for us. So why don't we go with those? Why don't we use what would afford people more ability to buy a home?
Well, Fannie and Freddie, they dictated, what version of the score that lenders need to use in order for them to buy those loans. But I want to make the point that, a newer version of the score works better, not because it's looking at one's income or one's demographic or anything along those lines. It's a better score because, our data scientists have been able to look at the information in the credit bureau and refine and make a better algorithm to better predict risk. And so I want to make the point that it's not about, income and demographic information is not information that's even available to us or at the credit bureau to factor into the credit score. It's because of the better, extracting information from the credit bureau to come up with a more predictive model. So does that help?
I think so. At least you're starting the dialogue, and it gets us starting talking about it. So Nedra Reddit, who's been very active in the chat, thank you, Nedra. She asked, why can't FICO, Experian, and TransUnion, why can't all three create a model that's consistent with POC, since it's no question that there is a lot of racism in the scoring system, in lending, in the housing industry in general? Why can't we create something consistent that can kind of right the wrongs in terms of what minorities go through with unemployment, student loans, predatory loans, all of that, to kind of level the field? Why can't we get some consistency in that area?
I'll add again that, we rely on exclusively the information on the credit bureau, and information related to demographics and income is not information that's even available to us. And so it's not something that we do consider or, intend to consider, even if it was there.
Okay. Why is it that I can look up my FICO score, and I think this is probably answered, but I'm sure it's on somebody's mind, on various platforms, i.e. Wells Fargo, Discover, Experian, and the scores are so drastically different. There's sometimes a 30-point differential between the three, so it's hard to know what's accurate.
Yeah, there are a couple of factors, Jill, I'll just jump in. There are a couple of factors that could cause a consumer to have different versions of FICO score. One is the bureau that the lender is using. Remember, we said that there's the FICO score. The lender chooses what version of the score to use and what bureau they pull from. So if bank, I'll make it up, Wells is using, version 8, and Bank of America is using version, a prior version in that, then that in and of itself could be a reason for the two scores to be different. So bureau and version of the score are factors that could be driving differences in a FICO score. And I guess one other point is, you need to make sure that what you're looking at are actually FICO scores and not something other than a FICO score.
Right.
So, so that's another reason why there could be a difference.
Okay. Nedra again, why does it take so long for the credit reporting agencies to correct incorrect data?
I don't know that's a FICO question. I mean, in terms of how long the Bureau takes to correct information, I mean, we rely on the information on the credit report. We don't call it accelerate how information gets updated or modified.
Okay.
And I do have one other, thank you, Jerry. I have one other thing to add to that. So for example, if a consumer finds something on their credit report that is incorrect, they of course have the right to dispute it. There is a number of years ago kind of a dispute process, I believe, which says that, the lender has 30-day period to respond back to the Bureau and say either yes, that's correct, or no, it's incorrect, and then, the Bureau can, needs to change it on the file. I will say today it's much better than I think it used to be. Before that was changed, the dispute process could go on and on and on. So I think there have been improvements, but, I think it's probably just an issue of, they're doing their best to try to make sure that information on the consumer file is accurate. And there's been so much more awareness these days of FICO scores and the importance of credit scores that I think they're doing everything they can to get it correct as fast as they can.
Okay. Here's a scenario that we run across quite a bit, and it can be quite frustrating. Why give a borrower a line of credit for $5,000 and then be penalized for using $4,500 even if they make their payments on time?
I don't want to take up all the questions, Julie. I'm happy
Okay.
to answer.
All right.
Go right ahead.
Don't speak at once.
Okay. It's really interesting, right? If you think about it, so if a consumer, let's say, wants a $5,000 line of credit, right? They're going to go to a lender and they say, please, I'd like to borrow this. At that point, the lender's making a decision based on whatever existing credit they have on their file today or whatever debt they have and how they're using it. I'm going to make a decision as to whether I'm willing to extend the credit risk to them or the credit to them of this $5,000. If the answer is yes, then you're right. The consumer has a new trade line on their file. They have this $5,000 line of credit and they can use it as they wish. Now, you're right, because the FICO score, now that that line of credit is now on the file, it now represents additional information that can factor into the FICO score. So similar to kind of a credit card answer, or a credit card account, if somebody is using much of or a high percentage of that revolving credit, yeah, it is going to look like they are, utilizing more, a good deal of the revolving credit. What actually might be a really good idea, if possible, is to maybe, if you want to borrow 5, see if you can get 10.
I was just about to ask that. Would that be a better solution? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if a lender is willing to extend something a little bit more to them and so that they're not going to be fully utilized, yeah, that could absolutely impact their score in a positive way.
And then use the overage to pay back. Just kind of play with it to make sure that you don't go under that 30%. Okay. Thank you. Another one. Why are collection agencies allowed to continue to buy and sell debts and create additional negative credit history?
All right. It's interesting. And Jerry, if you don't mind, I'll take this one. It's interesting. So for example, if let's say a consumer signs into a credit agreement with a credit contract with a lender and they borrow money, if they refuse to or cannot pay the lender back, the lender has the right to put that out to a collection agency. And if that collection agency is unable to collect it, they can resell the debt. What I will say, however, is FICO has become more aware in the last years about the idea that there could be, let's say, this reselling of debt from kind of one company to another. What we've tried to do in our models is to do as well as we can to identify that it's kind of the same parcel of debt that is continuing to be resold. And what our models try to focus on mostly is the date of the original delinquency, so that a consumer, as much as we can control it, a consumer is not getting penalized for having that debt resold.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Demetrius from Birmingham asks, with regards to disputing inaccuracies, and this may be you, it may not be, how long does a creditor have to resolve inaccuracies, and does multiple disputes seem to benefit the consumer of credit in an attempt to resolve the inaccuracy?
Well, I think, so again, based on the more recent rules about a dispute, I believe a lender, and I'm not an expert on this, but I believe a lender has a 30-day period of time in which they have to respond to a dispute. And then there was a part of a question about multiple disputes, and I'm not sure whether he's talking about kind of multiple disputes, like a dispute about several different trades, or whether they're disputing the same item multiple times.
Gotcha.
I'm not quite sure on that, but
Yeah.
and for each dispute that the lender receives,
it depends. I'm sure that's the answer. Okay, let's see. Boyd Campbell wants to know, how is it that a particular company can glean my credit history without my permission?
That's a good question. Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry. I didn't mean to keep going. I'll take this one. Interestingly, when a consumer goes to a bank and says, I want to borrow money, they sign an agreement, a credit agreement, basically, that says, you bank, you're going to give me the money that I'm looking for. I'm going to make monthly payments to you. I'm going to make it on time. And in that credit agreement, they are giving the right to that lender to report their credit information to the bureaus. So although it's probably in the fine print, it is most likely in that original loan agreement that says that how they're paying on their loan can be furnished to the credit bureaus.
Okay, Julie.
Yep,
I think part of that question, or maybe the genesis of that question has to do with pre-screening, promotionally, and how lenders regularly can, look at your credit, not post what's called a hard inquiry, so something that would negatively impact the credit, but what's called a promotional inquiry, which allows them to say, hey, based on your credit profile, I'd like to offer you a credit. So consumers who receive offers in the mail, for example, for a credit card, is a function of the lender, having the ability to look at the credit in a way that doesn't negatively impact the consumer's credit score.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry. And Boyd did say, yes, that was his question. So you were absolutely right. I will say too, so thank you. Nice job, Jerry. I will say too, there are very, very strict restrictions on lenders when they want to do pre-screening. So when they want to do pre-screening, they're actually not looking at the contents of a consumer's credit bureau file, right? They're not looking at a credit bureau report. What they traditionally will do is, work with the bureau, and they might say, all right, let's say I only lend to consumers in the Southeast, right? And I have a FICO score cutoff of, I don't know, 680 or whatever it is. They can go to a bureau and they can say, all right, bureau, I want to see or receive information on a set of consumers who have a FICO score of at least 680 and who live, in my footprint states, kind of the Southeast or whatever it is, the Bureau can make some of that information available to them. But to be clear, what the lender then has to do is, for everybody who meets certain criteria, they have to give a firm offer of credit. So they're not looking at credit reports, they don't have that kind of access to it, but there are very kind of clear restrictions as to what the lender can and can't do with that data.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gloria Evan wants to know, how do we find or determine the scoring date?
Oh, well, let's see. So she might be thinking about, oh, sorry, Jerry, did you want to answer that one?
No. I mean, no, go ahead, Julie.
Okay, well, she might be thinking about, for example, if you do have a, if you have, let's say, a bank card with a lender that is part of the open access program, and they're sharing your FICO scores with you, through the open access program, the lender always has to provide to you, this is from, Experian, this is a FICO score 9, and it was calculated as of whatever. So I don't know whether that's what she's thinking. I'm not.
Okay. I'm not sure, but go ahead,
I
Julie.
also think that, when you're applying for credit, and let's say you go to an auto dealer and they are going to pull your score for the credit. I mean, as part of the process, they'll say, we see that you passed and we've reached out to this particular bureau as of this date. So I think maybe just asking the dealership, for example, for an auto would be part of the process of knowing the score date. It'd be pretty close to when you ask for the credit, I imagine.
Okay, and that's a good segue into the next question that came from Madam Lydia Smith, who is the chair of our mortgage committee. She said, and she sounded frustrated, please explain why the credit report will list too many inquiries as a negative factor when a borrower has multiple auto inquiries and this is the only inquiry they have. I am confused when you state that inquiries are counted as one. Please explain this.
Yeah.
And Jerry, I don't know, do you want to do that or you want me to?
Sure, I'll take the first swing at that one. So if you remember, inquiries, customer-initiated inquiries, are the only inquiries that factor into the FICO score, and we only consider consumer-initiated inquiries that occur within 12 months of a FICO score. However, for certain types of consumer-initiated inquiries, such as auto, mortgage, and student loan, within 30 days of the score date, or 30 days prior to the score, within 30 days prior to the score date, those inquiries are not factored into the score. So they have no, call it, effect, positive or negative, onto the score. However, between days 31 and month 12, if a consumer has multiple mortgage inquiries, and I'll stick with mortgage, within a 45-day period, because a lender is, lender or mortgage broker is pulling, from multiple bureaus during the time that the consumer is shopping for a mortgage, those multiple mortgage inquiries within a 45-day period will only count as one in the FICO score calculation. So from a FICO score perspective, while there may be multiple mortgage inquiries on that consumer's report, the calculation only considers it as one. Julie, you want to comment or anything?
Yeah, let me go back to Jill. I'm sorry. Did you say the reason code said too many inquiries, but she only had one inquiry? Is that what you said?
Please explain why the credit report will list too many inquiries as a negative factor when a borrower has multiple auto inquiries and this is the only inquiry they have. She's confused when it's stated that inquiries are counted as one.
Yep, and I would be too. So there are a couple things about that. Like Jerry said, it's possible that even though there are multiple auto inquiries, it kind of depends on the timing, and it's very possible that the FICO score is still seeing them as just a single inquiry, right? Because what the consumer would look at, oh, I have 4 auto inquiries. It's possible if they're within that 45-day window the FICO score is still going to see them as 1. But even so, if we think back to how reason codes are derived, right, you could have somebody with a very, very low revolving utilization like Oscar Oldtimer, right? And it said, you know, the biggest reason against you is revolving utilization, right? So what's actually, what the reason code too many inquiries is actually telling us is that there were at least some inquiries, and it could be only one inquiry. And yet, if it is the thing on the credit report that's having the greatest, you know,
weighted, if you will,
on the score, it could still show up as one of the reasons. However, there's another really interesting thing on this. I spoke to one of the banks that I am associated with and I support on a regular basis. It was interesting. She sent me, and Jerry, I don't know that I had a chance to share this with you yet. She sent me an email a couple months ago and said, Julie, I don't understand it. You know, she was searching for an auto loan and she applied with her own bank and got an auto loan. And what she found is that her inquiries were not deduped. And she said, I don't understand it. You know, help me understand, why are my auto inquiries not deduped? And we dug into it and we found out that there is a code that each bank is reporting on inquiries. So for example, if it's a regular bank loan, they might have a code that says regular bank loan. And if it's an auto loan, they might report a code that says auto loan. What they found out was that for her bank where she worked and that she applied with, all of their auto loans were being reported as bank loans. Yeah, so it was the inquiry type that was not going to be deduped, right? It was just showing as a bank loan. And so we had to go kind of around and around, and we had to get to the bureau and understand kind of what codes she had and that sort of thing. So that could be an impact, right? So to the question, it could be, you know, if the lender is not reporting inquiries with the right code, like the auto code or whatever that would be deduped, that could be why that occurred.
And what is the remedy for that for someone that's already marginalized? They don't know. How would you fix that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And yeah, somebody said that's a big error that made by the lender. Totally agree. And I'm so glad that this lender, you know, it was a large, you know, top 20 lender. Really glad they brought it to my attention and we could get it fixed. What could they do? You know, I guess if somebody saw that, they could go back to the lender and say, you know, hey, I'm just trying to figure out what could they do. I don't know. Jerry, do you have any great ideas? I'm sort of struggling at this time. Yeah, I mean, somebody said they could ask the lender, how do they report the score? And it's interesting. It would be, you know, they could go back to the lender and say, you know, on this auto loan that I applied for, and you put an inquiry, a hard inquiry on my file, is it being reported as an auto inquiry or not? I mean, I think that would probably be a really good place to start, because if it's just a normal bank loan, then it probably is not being deduped.
Okay, thank you.
Really good question.
Yep.
This is kind of a question, suggestion, since you guys are like the top executives at FICO. Why couldn't the credit model be modified to include paid collections, i.e. medical, repos, paid accounts? Why make borrowers wait 5 to 7 years or more before these accounts will not be seen as negative when they are paid?
Really good news. Jerry, you want to take that one?
Sure. So beginning in FICO Score 9, which came out around like the 2014 area time period, the good news is that all paid collection agency accounts are now excluded from the FICO Score calculation.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, you know, paid collection agency accounts are now excluded from the FICO Score calculation beginning with FICO Score 9, and as well as the most recent version, which is on the market, which is FICO Score 10. So this does not apply to first-party collection, but third-party. So that was an enhancement that we made in FICO Score 9.
And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but if you're trying to get a home loan and they only refer to the FICO 4 or 5 model, it means nothing. So that's where you have to be savvy enough to know that sometimes it's not good to pay off old bills, to let them go and focus in other areas.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, this can be really confusing, but that's a great question.
Yeah, it is a really good
And
and sorry, Jerry, did you have another comment?
no, go right ahead, Julie.
I was just going to say one other really important thing to note is that hopefully in about a year, we believe that Fannie and Freddie and FHFA are going to come out with, endorsement of a more recent version. So hopefully we'll just have perhaps, another year to wait. And I will say too, Jill, you did say something about medical collections.
Yes.
So again, with FICO score 9, medical collections are not treated as severely as a non-medical collection.
Mm.
Right.
Is FICO advocating and pushing for the higher versions to be utilized? Is it okay? So is that some?
Absolutely.
That's
Okay.
what Jerry and I do. That's our job.
So is that something that we, being NAREB leaderships, needs to lock arms with you all as partners to really advocate together?
Well,
with them?
we could, however, again, because you're dealing with mortgage lenders, that they kind of had their hands tied until Fannie and Freddie endorse a new model.
Right.
Got you.
So
Okay. Just want to maximize our partnership. And I think you all touched on this question a little bit, but it's so relevant. I just still want to put it out there. How are credit models being modified to be more flexible during COVID-19, where people are losing jobs and incomes and it's no fault of their own?
Well, lenders across the industry have taken giant steps to accommodate consumers in distress through payment accommodation. And an implication of a payment accommodation is, the consumer is getting some relief from making their debt obligation for X period of time. And essentially not allowing those balances to roll delinquent. How consumers benefit from that is that as consumers in distress are not having, without the delinquency, the FICO score is not, there's not a delinquency to impact the FICO score. Actually, what we're seeing in the industry are, some of the lowest level of delinquencies, not because consumers aren't struggling, but because lenders are freezing or not allowing the consumers to roll delinquent as they take advantage of payment accommodation. So.
Okay. So I want to jump to a subject that's very, very near and dear to NAREB with regards to millennials. There are quite a few millennials that have the income, but because of student loan debts and, they are just beat up in terms of their score and being able to qualify. What is FICO doing, or what do you suggest to us to help this demographic so that we can get African-American potential home buyers into homes earlier? They've done all the right thing. They graduated, they got the college degree, they have the job, but they can't get the loan because of student loans.
So it's not a matter of establishing credit because they have a student loan. It's a matter of allowing them to raise their score. Is that the focus? Is that the?
Yes, or to look upon them favorably rather negatively just because they have student loans.
Yeah.
It's a real catch-22.
Yeah, again, I think back to one of Julie's first or second slides is, when you look at the credit report, there's a section of information that, with personal identifiable information, we don't use or have the information around we don't use age or demographic to go to, in the calculation of the FICO score. So it's one of those areas where the score is blind to those factors, to those dimensions. And
Okay. Yeah, that's one of those things.
Yeah. I don't know, did you want to add to that, Julie?
It's it's a really good question. And if a millennial or a young person or even an old person, if at some point they got student loans, it represents debt that they owe, and any lender is going to kind of take that into account in terms of, it's kind of, similar to if they had gone out and, I don't know, bought a big car or something like that, right? It represents dollars that they owe. And any lender is going to take that into account in terms of, extending additional money to them. Yeah, it's a really tough situation.
If the income is there, and to the extent that they are best able to service that student loan debt, on-time payments, then over time they have the ability to accumulate, a better credit over time, and that time since last delinquency, if one even existed, becomes further and further out. The outstanding balance, the second largest category of the FICO score, becomes, over time, it begins to diminish. So if the income is there to service the debt, then those are the type of behaviors that over time they'll able to, allow them to build their credit score and make them more attractive to, or avail, right for certain lenders to issue credit.
So a question, why consider a student loan and not a medical loan? Why is that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
But why consider student loan debt, but look over medical debt that's owed?
Yeah.
It just seems like, and Cameron brought up a good point, very, very good point. If qualitative factors have been implicitly used to consider loan amounts in the past, then why not utilize these qualitative factors in new models of the FICO score, particularly with regards to student loans, to help consumers, because rent is riskier than it seems like. We can't get ahead in that space.
I mean, I think
we're just asking that it be considered to modify, because the DTIs are just messed up for college grads, and we really want to do all that we can to get people that have the income and have the stability and have the desire to be able to purchase. And if the only thing holding them back is a credit score only because of a student loan debt, not because of recklessness, not because, that it just seems unfair.
I mean, one thought that I have is, we're not the lender.
Yeah.
We create the tool.
We don't mean to beat you up.
No. I guess my point is, what we tried to do, what we did, when we came out with, 30 years ago, when we developed the FICO score, we felt that was transformational because it allowed for, quote unquote, the democratization of credit, and allowed for a standard and consistent way to look at someone's credit. Not to say that that's the only tool that a lender has to use, but as I think about some of the questions and points you're making now, if a lender has, to start with, that standardized tool called the FICO score, coupled with other things that they can qualitatively incorporate into that decision, that could be a way in which the lender can, allow for certain, consumer segments to be afforded more credit, as opposed to embedding or trying to find a way to embed qualitative information into the score. I think it's probably better to keep the score, call it demographic or qualitatively neutral, and let the credit policy be a way in which credit can then be, the decision around the credit decision is enhanced.
Okay. Well, to end on a positive note, we thank you, Julie and Jerry, for this amazing boot camp. I guess to end this, because the chat is just going crazy. We just ask that as our partner that you all, we know that you're not the lender, but if you can kind of help steer the car with regards to lenders and be that liaison for us to help us find that sweet spot where we can get more people in more houses and change lives and build more stable communities. And that's what we're asking you to do, and whatever we can do to assist you. And we want this to be a reciprocal, relationship. So thank you so very much, everybody on the call. Thank you for the 170 some that stayed on. Please give
Thank you very
our
much.
facilitators a big hand clap. We always enjoyed the FICO boot camp. We need to now take it to a FICO boot camp 2.0 in advance. We so appreciate you all. And for everybody on the call, continue to join us. We have 3 more days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tomorrow, we just have one event at 12:30, and it kind of ties in, everything ties in. It's the NAREB legislative update tomorrow at 12:30. Invite everybody to join us for our 73rd annual convention. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for sticking around.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.